Hey, what's happening, everyone? Welcome to the program. I'm your host for this week's edition of the show. My name is Jeff Gerstmann, and this is the Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's a podcast. It's about video games, which is, it's like an interactive television. You hook a bunch of buttons up to a TV. You push the buttons and they make the man jump. If you want to make the man jump, you hook the buttons up to the TV and you push these buttons and then it just, goes from there. That's video games. They make a lot of different ones. There's one where you're a guy and you jump. There's one where you're a blob and when you hit the jump button, he sticks to the ceiling, which is crazy. Honestly, like it doesn't make any sense. Blobs aren't real. Like the guy is real. The jumping guy, that's a real guy. But you got like a blob. You got like it's like a fantasy realm is what I'm saying. It's like anything is possible inside the video games. You can really do with the technology, the technological tech that they use to make these video games. You will believe a crocodile can run around and jump on stuff. There's a lot. You can do it. You could be a clown what digs in the dirt eating cherries all the while monsters try to stop you. There's just a lot of really weird stuff happening out there, and so we're here to document these video games and let people know what's going on out there, so you can protect yourself, from this stuff. It's not all surf and sun out here. It's like like a walking glove or something. It's sick. It's sick. A unicycle with no one on it, racing other unicycles also with no one on it. It's like, what is this? What kind of drugs are these people on? Am I right? God. Sometimes they make video games based on television shows. You can so it's like that's really confusing because you're like watching a television show and you're like, do I push the buttons now? It's like, no, you need to play the video. It's a separate thing. If you want to make the man jump, you can't just push the buttons while you're watching TV and make Tim the Tool Man reach for the sky. It just doesn't work that way. Yet, I mean, hey, I don't know. Technology is scary. It does a lot of stuff all the time. So, maybe by the time you're listening to this, who knows what's possible. We'll find out together here on the show. We're here to talk about video games. They made a video game where you're in Japan and you stab people. It's called Tenchu for the PlayStation. It's pretty good. You run around the rooftops. Really looking out, looking down on people and straight murdering them. It's a good game. You should check it out. This week, we're talking about a game called Assassin's Creed Shadows. Shadows. I am always. Is it Shadows? I feels like it's yes, Shadows. Like, is it Shadow or Shadows? It's Shadows. I've been playing a chunk of Assassin's Creed Shadows, and I still have a lot left to play. It seems like a very big game. In some ways, like reading some of the stuff they sent along with the game, like it reads a little bit like, oh, maybe this actually is a little bit, like smaller than some of the other kind of modern Assassin's Creed games. And you play it for all, you're like, oh no, dude, this is this is a map full of stuff to go and do, and it is a lot structured similarly to a lot of those other kind of modern Assassin's Creed games, for sure. But I think it does some things really well. Like I am enjoying it. For the most part, with a very severe problem that I will get to in a minute here. I'm really enjoying it. It is an interesting setting, an interesting reason. Like so. It's a lot, man. Okay, where do I want to begin here? Have you played Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands and thought, what if instead of a ninja, like a me with a gun and then 3 other people with guns, what if instead I was a lady with a sword? That is Assassin's Creed Shadows. It is actually quite a bit like Wildlands in a few different ways. So you start the game. This is the first game, or what? Rather, this is not even the first game. This game has 2 protagonists, but the game is structured in such a way that you will end up playing probably like 10 hours of it or something before you have the opportunity to like have these characters interact in any way or switch between them or anything like that. Like you start out, I don't know that I really like the start of it. They start you out as the guy, he becomes a samurai and is working for Oda Nobunaga, who's an ambitious guy. And you do like one mission, one little starter thing as this dude, and then it flips perspectives over to Naoe, who, is more, she's smaller, she is running around with a katana, she's hopping from rooftop to rooftop, like all of that sort of stuff, but she is not wearing gigantic, bulky samurai armor either. And she is pretty cool. I don't know. Like it's a revenge tale. Like the game pretty much, like her part of the game opens with her, father getting, murdered in front of you. But it is also this setup for like, hey, there's like 12 dudes. I think it's 11. I think it's like 11 guys that are like kind of standing over you and your father. And then literally it does like the Mercenaries 1 thing. Like it's not a deck of 52, but it is similar to like a Shadows of Mordor, similar to a Mercenaries. Like there is like literally like, here's all the people you need to go fucking kill. Like, hey, they left you for dead, and here's these people, and you need to go take care of it. And it's not as simple as like go there and kill them. There are missions that lead up to that, much like Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands, where each part of the world had a lead character, and you had to eliminate a number of them before it would let you go finish the game. But it is very much a setup of like, okay, there are a lot of different people here, and like this one had a gun, and this one had this, and they're all colorful in their own ways. And then you are basically going to go on this quest to uncover who the hell they are, which you don't even know who most of them are at the outset of the game. They kind of give you like a couple of them to chase after at the very beginning, and it'll open up from there. And it is that sort of tale, and I'm finding that part really compelling. And then you will eventually, and so this is the part like I'm not quite there yet. But you will get back to a point where you are able to play as Yasuke, the other guy. I assume it's a situation where he's going to join forces with you, and because the idea is, some of the missions in the game you can play as either character. I don't. Again, having not really spent a ton of time as the guy, other than these introductory missions, I cannot think of a single reason why you would want to play as bulky samurai man in the Assassin's Creed game. But I think part of that probably comes down to like there will be, there are missions where there are more armored enemies, and you need to blast that armor off of them with attacks before you're really doing damage. And so I'm guessing that he will end up doing more of that damage. So if you're just looking to go into open combat, he may be the better choice. Which leads me to, you know what, I don't mean to do this as a cliffhanger thing, but let's take a quick break and we'll come back and I will tell you about the thing that made me almost stop playing this game 5 minutes in. And made me have to change a lot of stuff about it before I could play any more of it at all. Let's take this break and I'll come right back. You have to eat food. These are the rules. But eating food sometimes takes time, prepping food, getting it all ready, all this other stuff. And a lot of the fast options are, let's face it, garbage. You're just going to get garbage delivered to your house. You're going to go out, you're going to go to a drive-thru, you're going to get garbage. If you don't have a ton of time to prep food, but you want to eat real food, there is another way. Factor meals arrive fresh and fully prepared. It's perfect for your active lifestyle. These are chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. And they're dietitian approved and they're ready to heat and eat in like 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. They have a ton of options. Over 40 meals on this week's menu. You can go get like a herbed ricotta and beef ragu, fiesta salmon, Louisiana shrimp, chorizo and roasted pepper pasta. The list goes on and on. And you can even add more to it. They got a lot of cold pressed juice that I've been finding to be very nice, very refreshing as like a little morning starter, a little cold pressed juice to get you going. But these meals are quick. And it's real food. It's not like some gray goo. It's like, hey, here's a freaking pork chop. Eat it. And you're like, yes, a pork chop. I recognize this as a pork chop. This tastes like a pork chop. This is a pork chop. Hey, this is a pretty good pork chop. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, grab-and-go snacks, and plenty of more add-ons. If you've got dietary preferences, they've got things like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus. They've got keto options if that's your thing. So, a wide variety. The stuff comes directly to your home, cold, in a box, with these plastic ice things, keeping it all nice, ready for you to put in your refrigerator. And then, you're ready to go to town. It's time to eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code factorpodcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code factorpodcast at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Okay, so do you remember another Ubisoft game called Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown? It was the 2D Prince of Persia game that was pretty neat. That like the rap on it became like, oh, it didn't sell well enough, and they're not going to make another one, and all this other stuff. But like the game itself was pretty well liked. That is a game where it has attacks you can dodge and attacks that you can counter and attacks you cannot counter. And it does this with a colored sparkle on the attack, a blue or red or whatever, that was not something you could fix with the accessibility options. And you'd think like, well, surely that's not a mistake Ubisoft would make again. They did! Assassin's Creed Shadows has colorblind options for the interface. Things that you can change on the interface. You can change, and I changed it. I changed it so like instead of a red exclamation point that shows in the middle center, like the top center of the screen whenever you have been detected, it's now blue. You cannot change the color on the attack glints. And so it has these red, these red unblockable attacks that come your way. that as a colorblind person, I can't see for shit. And you cannot change it. They have pages of accessibility options in there. But the option that is supposed to change the interface things, which I would say the little glint on an attack, which is meant to be readable by the human player, is part of the interface. It does not change it. And so basically, like, I couldn't beat the, they set you up with some tutorial stuff. And so you go through the part with Yasuke, and his part is just like, crush these fuckers, whatever. And you are sorting the shit out of them. And then you switch, and you're playing as Naoe, and you're like, and then she's like, she's way smaller and way easier to kill. And so look out for this shit. And so that's when all of these red attacks start coming your way, mixed in with, the other stuff. And it is terrible. I could not complete. I spent like 20 minutes on like these tutorial fights, just going like, just being like completely stuck on this stuff. My wife has been locked out of the house somehow. I'm going to go let her in, and then we will resume this. So I turned the game off, and I was like, well, fuck this. I was like, I guess I'm not playing any of this. And that was extremely, extremely annoying. As a quick recap of how this stuff works. The right way to do this is to never rely on color for interface elements such as this, because I think I'm not alone in this, being colorblind. You get to a point where, because I can't trust my eyes, I never care about color of anything. So, like, even the ability to change the colors on something like that has a very tight timing window only helps so much, because you're still, like, you just don't spend time discerning between colors because like, well, my eyes, whatever, I don't know. And so anything like that is going to be a problem, even if you can change it. And that's why any interface element or anything like this, you use patterns, you use symbols, you don't just rely on color. Like, that feels like it's a pretty, if not established, it's definitely like the emerging mentality about some of this accessibility stuff, is to just never rely on color for anything, or purely on color for anything ever. It's not the dark days of Rockstar Presents Table Tennis, where you have to read the color on the ball to figure out where the spin is, like, we're past that now. And so that's like that was a super frustrating thing. But I was like, like, I want to see this. And so after struggling with that for a little while longer, I just said, fuck it. And I turned the difficulty way, way down. And now it doesn't fucking matter if I block these things or not. Which, it is unfortunate, because, like, I would like to play this game in a challenging way and not in a, I'm just going to kill everybody sort of way. But I don't have that option, and it's very frustrating. So I ended up turning the difficulty down a notch or two, and then the end result is I find myself dodging every attack as soon as I see it coming in, because, again, there's no time to think about, like, is this the right color? Is this the parry color? Is this is this the dodge color? What am I going to do here? And, just kind of hoping for the best. Instead, I've set it up so if I guess wrong, the penalty is way lower, because I'm not taking nearly as much damage anymore. Which makes the game feel, it's not a difficult game to begin with. Because it's not like the timing stuff is like super, and it's not there are enemies that will, there are higher level enemies, because you do level up and gain XP and all this other stuff, that will kill you in a hit or two if you're not careful. But generally speaking, between your health recovery items and whatever else, like, I have not really had I was not, it doesn't seem like it's a massive challenge to begin with. That said, now, like, there's very little penalty for mistiming anything with the way it's set right now. And that's unfortunate in a different way. Like, I don't want to play the game this way, but I feel like I have been forced to play the game this way because of their bad accessibility options. But yeah, that's how it goes, I guess. So this has resulted in me just really playing the game with a reckless abandon that has actually been kind of fun. Which has resulted in some interesting moments. Like, you're going off on these missions and, you're trying to figure out where people are. This is also the first time I think I've taken one of these games and left it on the exploration mode, which is the mode where it doesn't just put the icon on the map and say, go here. Instead, it'll say, like, you're looking for this guy. He's in this district of the town. You'll get like 3 tips. It'll say, like, it's on the southwest side of town. It's in the firearms district. It's this. And then you'll go there and walk around until you find it. It's not always a great option. Like one of the early ones I was doing, you're looking for a guy in town. And it's this way. You're in the southwest section of town. So I'm just like running around going like, I don't know, it's around here somewhere. And I ran close enough to where it is and it just appeared on the map. But like the guys were in a house. So it's not like there was no on-screen indicator as to like, oh, I'm headed in the right direction. It was more just like, yeah, you hit a certain radius and it popped on the map. There you go. So even the exploration mode is not, I don't know, you're not like really exploring per se. It's really just like, can you get close enough? And there's also this concept of sending scouts. And so you can send scouts into an area which will kind of help contract that search radius and put things on the map for you if you want to spend your scout points that way. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's a very easy game with the way I have it set right now. And again, I want to reiterate that I'm stuck setting it this way. And so as a result, it's led to me just like getting through shit that like maybe would have been a little bit more difficult or a little bit more challenging, but none of it has seemed overwhelming. So in that town, adjacent to that, it's kind of like the first town you're sent to kind of do some of these missions. There's a big castle, and at the top of the castle was an eagle point, which is a point on the map that if you like Assassin's Creed, you climb up the tower and it synchronizes. But in here, it's like a fast travel point. It's not. I don't know, like because it's got this exploration mode and whatever else, like it's not filling in the map with a ton of stuff. It'll add some additional question marks to your map, like points of interest, but it doesn't just say, here's where everything is. So it's not as useful as some of the climbing maybe was in earlier Assassin's Creed games. But I was like, I want a fast travel point here in this town because I have a feeling I'm going to be coming back here a few times. The only one is at the top of this castle. I guess I'll crawl in here real stealth-like and get up here and do this. But the castles are also like missions unto themselves. Like, it's a guard post. It's a whatever. It's like, here's this castle full of guys. And there are 5 enemies that you must kill to complete the mission. Or you kill 5 guys, you will get a key that you can use to open a legendary chest. And then that'll have some gear in it for you or whatever. And that's the mission part of the castle. And I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to go do this. And it took me like 40 minutes of like skulking around and, finding my way. Like it's a really large area and finding these 5 guys took time and everything. But I murdered every single person in that fucking castle. I just, snuck up behind them, hide in the bushes, like standing on a rooftop and throw something at them and kill them. Like, you're really, really well armed in this game. Like your ability to straight murder these fools without them ever even knowing you're there is fantastic. And also, you have a great ability to get away and, hide again. And, so it's video game ass stealth in that particular way. It does the Sam Fisher thing of like, oh, you ran out of vision and now there's a little silhouette of where they last saw you. And so you can hide in a bush and look at that silhouette, knowing that they're eventually going to come to that spot and then smoke them. There's a lot of good stab this guy moments in the game. In fact, like even in open combat, the game, like I almost wish you could turn this down. I should look and see. If you're just killing one guy, or like it's the last guy in a group or something, it will kill them with flourish. Meaning she will flip over their head, get behind them, and cut their fucking throat and throw them to the ground. It's like that's kind of the only animation. There's another one where she will run up and stick them really good, and stick them a couple times and they'll fall over. But like the overly repetitive "I killed this guy" animation is a bit much. It's nice though. Good spray of blood that'll spray on the walls around you and stuff. Like the blood tech is quite good this year. It's got a nice feel to it. Like you feel intensely powerful against these dolts, these dopes, these idiots. And so, yeah, I don't know. That part of it is a good time for sure. Other than I wish that there were either more animations for the kind of end of fight kill, or just like none, because it's, it takes a little time and you're like, just let me go open this chest so I can move on with my day. I've seen her cut so many throats today. It's, as I said, it reminded me of Ghost Recon Wildlands in a handful of different ways. One of these ways is, I don't know if you had this experience with Wildlands. That terrain is very mountainous. There are parts of Wildlands where you're running down a mountain, or you're and so basically anytime you're going off the roads in that game, you're just off in the underbrush on a mountain, just like running down a way too steep mountain for you. And there are a lot of moments in both games where you're looking at the screen and all you can see is a bunch of fucking trees, because you're just in the middle of the brush and you're running down this mountain and you're like, I don't even know where, am I going the right way? So it's a game where like a lot of the direct paths of like, I'm just going to run there, are a hassle for a couple of different reasons, because either it's too steep and you have to work your way around, or you're running down a weird hill to get there and it just feels like clumsy. It feels clumsy. Like, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing this. And what they would have you do in Assassin's Creed is they would have you get on your horse, which you put down on the D-pad to summon mount. And then you can turn on a line, a guide line that always follows the roads. In fact, if you're off a road, it will not show the guideline. So you're just like, I don't even know which way to go to get to the guideline. What the fuck is, and then you can follow this guideline, which follows the roads, and it'll follow a road all the way up the mountain, whatever path it will get you up there. I found that to be not great. In fact, there almost should be was it Red Dead that did the like, just get there? Just horse. You're a horse. Go to this place and get there, so I don't have to steer. And so you end up kind of galloping to these locations, and then sometimes if depending on where you're going, it won't be on the road, so eventually the Pathfinder will just go like, that's the end of the route. And you're like, oh, I guess I need to get off and climb up somewhere now. Like, you're not going to help. Okay, you're going to help me here, but not to. All right, cool. It's like a very limited, for a system that either shouldn't be in the game at all or should be good. It is decidedly in the middle of those two things. And I don't know, that's a little frustrating in spots for sure, but there's a whole element of like building a hideout and upgrading your hideout, and you're finding a blacksmith for your hideout so that you can engrave weapon upgrades onto your, basically you can engrave buffs onto your weapons if they have slots for buffs. You're finding a lot of gear in a way that like obviously Assassins has done this for a while, right? It's not dramatically different. I'll say this, like, I think from what I've played of it so far, this is the most I have enjoyed a modern Assassin's Creed game. Like, this format, this style of Assassin's Creed this feels like it is probably the best one of those. But it is very much one of those. You know, I think if you were expecting or hoping for something that was a more grand departure from what they've been doing, you may find yourself disappointed. But I do think that this is them continuing to build on the things that they have done and building on that stuff in mostly intelligent ways. I also think it's a really satisfying setting. I think the, like, hey, we're going to present you with these 11 guys and you need to go fucking smoke these. I think that's just a very effective trope that a lot of stories outside of video games have used for revenge tales, but I think it's a particularly effective when done right in a video game, because it gives you that laundry list of just like, you're going to kill all these fucking people. And you're like, yes, I am. Yes, I am. I am absolutely going to kill all of these people because they deserve it. And I think it's a very effective structure for the game. They lay some animus stuff on you relatively early on. There is a voice calling to you through the animus that is like trying to knock you loose from whatever brainwashing that whoever the, you know, presumably the Templars are trying to do to you. I don't have the answer to that specific question. But there's very much a voice that's just like, good, you broke free of it. Oh, they're trying to invoke the bleeding effect on you, but you're able to resist it. Great. I'll talk to you later. And so there's just a mysterious voice that calls to you through the animus from time to time. This manifests itself in like, there's literally like a big broken shard animus portal that shows up in the world at times. And then you go and like you're on your way to your next mission and instead it's that. And then that pulls you out for a cutscene and drops you back in. It's kind of, you know, they've always jumped time. Or like, oh, okay, now let's skip through you riding to this mission and just put you there, whatever. Let's use this little story technique to get you there. It has that similar kind of mentality to it. It also, the animus also kind of surfaces. I wasn't really able to test this out because the game's not out yet and the online servers were not fully activated for this. So I was just getting a blank screen. But it has like the equivalent of like daily missions, or like it'll have missions with timers on them. It'll be like, go here. There's an anomaly in the animus. Go here and kill these dudes, or go here and pick this up, or whatever, and you will get some other currency, some animus currency for a project's screen that I was unable to see during my time in the review. But that I don't get the impression that any of that is necessarily new to the franchise either. So I'm finding it really engaging. Again, like I'm still like, I'm a little melancholy about it, particularly because I have to play it on this lower difficulty, and it's like not like as a video game, it's just like you're so going through the motions, overpowered. Like, I'm just going to go here and kill all these people. And so the stealth is really what you make of it, right? It's like, oh, well, I'm going to do this stealthily because that's way more fun than open combat. So I'm just doing it for me, though. It's not like if I get seen, I'm going to get killed, because I can just practically mash on the sword button, and which is a lot of the you have a light attack and a heavy attack, and I have not found very many reasons to use the heavy attack, which has a longer wind up, so you get interrupted while you're doing it, and you know, I find that if you just are keeping up the pressure, at least with Naoe, you know, with Yasuke, the combat's a little bit different because it's meant to be a little more deliberately paced, a little more like, let's get our sword on, than the assassin with her hidden blades and all of that stuff, you know. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, you know, eventually the game will open up to a way where, you know, we are seeing more of that guy again. But I have not played far enough into the game to get to that point. So it's a weird thing where it's like, I like it, but like I'm being held back by this accessibility stuff, and by the, you know, the low difficulty makes it kind of like cat playing with an injured mouse. Like, it's just dumb. Like, there's nothing to it on this lower difficulty setting. It's just like, and if you need, I don't mean to say that in a way of just like, look at me, like if you want that, it's there for you. Like, it's absolutely a totally viable way to play the game. But me personally, speaking for me, it is really sucked any bit of tension out of the game whatsoever, of just like, oh, like these guys are like, no one in this game is scary whatsoever. Like, it puts levels on you and on the enemy. And, like I'm like, at one point I was like level 7 or 8 or something, and you're fighting these level 11 or 12 guys. I'm just like, fuck you. Just sticking them all. The great thing about the stealth system being, again, a video games stealth system, and the ability you have to just like get out of sight and be technically hidden again, is you'll find yourself in open combat. Like, again, like you'll find like the first one of these guys that you're meant to kill. And I just rounded a corner and he was there. And it was like, oh, shit. Okay. I was hoping to maybe approach this in a different way, but you're here, so I guess let's fight. I was hoping to maybe dive on you from the roof and just straight up murder you. But instead, it's this massive life bar that takes up the entire screen. And like, it's 2 bars, 1 full bar of armor, and 1 full bar of life. And you're just like, man, this will take forever. So I started chipping away at him while murdering all the guys around him. And once I got it down to like him and maybe one other enemy, I ran around a corner and the last known position thing popped up. And I was like, oh shit, right. It's so easy to get away from these guys because they're all slow and dumb. And so I just ran around the corner and crouched in a bush, because there's just bushes everywhere. You can go prone. So even even tall grass will help you. And I got that, and then I ran around and stood on the other side of a box, and the guy came like slowly walking around the box, and I tapped R1, and she just rounded the corner and went and stuck him, and he was fucking dead. And so it was just like all that life meter, all that stuff, the power of not having to chip away at that thing and just like one-shotting him felt great. The way he wanted it. You want the assassinations in an Assassin's Creed game to feel like, yeah, I killed that fucker. And I wish I could have done it with more flourish and more panache, but it was still satisfying to just stick that fucking guy. And so like, I think that's, if you like that kind of stealth game, if you just want like some clockwork mechanical, like check this thing out, that's this video game very much. Like, it doesn't feel like a game that's necessarily pushing anything forward. You're not like, this is still a game where you're riding a horse on a road and you're just trampling people because the AI doesn't know how to get out of the way, and sometimes shit happens. And like, there are moments where you're following story characters where it actually will have a button you can hold to like automatically follow them, and they do a little walk and talk. I was doing a walk and talk with a guy last night, and I don't know what happened. I must have, like, in my quest to find this guy, I might have pissed someone off and didn't kill him or whatever. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm just like walking with this guy, and all of a sudden the guy runs up with a sword and just fucking slashes me. I'm like, what the shit is this? So it knocked me out of following him. It interrupted the line of dialogue. I turned, murdered this guy. The like samurai cops are killing 2 other guys off to the side. And then meanwhile, this guy's like walking away. So I'm like, shit, I got to catch up to him. So I go back, I hit the follow button. The dialogue starts again. She says the line of dialogue again, gets interrupted again because there's another AI, like just like another pedestrian bumps into her, knocks her out of the range of the conversation, gets stuck there for a little bit, and then gets unstuck and catches up, and then says the line of dialogue a third time. It's a video game with all of that. with very much all of that, and so there's aspects of it that you go like, man, I wish that we were kind of past this. This seems like it could be done more smoothly. Boy, Assassin's Creed has always been about trying to figure out how to navigate crowds, and that was one of the very early, very impressive things about it, was like watching you slip through crowds in a very slick kind of way. And now here we are kind of bumping into guys and being stuck on these tracks. You know, still not a solved problem. I think that stuff is, I look at that and go like, man, I wish that was better. I wish that, you know, that was better. But also I look at it and go like, fucking video games. And so I don't know, like it did not necessarily rub me the wrong way. Instead, it was just this moment of just like, these open world games, they sure are big, dumb open world games, aren't they? Yeah, I don't know. That's Assassin's Creed Shadows to me. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of it. I would love if the accessibility stuff on the color of those attacks was something that they could fix. It never did get fixed in Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. And so I'm not optimistic that it's something that they will make a big change on here either. But even in spite of that, you know, it's still a collection of systems that you can poke at, and I think that's sometimes that's a really fun thing to do with open world games, is to just like look at this crazy thing, and then I'm gonna poke at it this way, and I'm gonna stab this guy, and you know, like I told you about that castle I cleared out. I cleared out that castle, and then I said, I better get back to work and do the mission I was gonna do. The mission was to go back to that castle and kill a guy. Like, they're already all dead, man. That castle was full of people again as soon as I got back 5 minutes later. but hey, what are you gonna do? It's an open world video game with all of the things that those types of things have been messy and weird in these specific ways for decades now. So I don't know. Like I tend to err on the side of like video games should be getting better and you know, like technology should be marching forward in ways that prevents these things from being as janky as they still are sometimes. I think what changed is we just don't get as many big games anymore now that there are fewer publishers putting out games all the time, and certainly the open world boom is over. And so I think there's a part of this that's like, well, we don't get nearly as many games like this anymore. And so in a weird, dark way, some of these funky, you know, moments, some of these pseudo broken things that you're finding along the way have a weird charm to them again. Of just like, oh, it's nice. Just like back in the good old Xbox 360 and PS3 days. Yay. It's maybe not the greatest attitude to have. Again, you know, I do generally think that, you know, games should be moving forward. It's a nice looking game. I've been playing it on a PlayStation 5 Pro, set to the balanced setting, because that gets you 40 frames a second instead of 30. Which is, and it still gets you the extended ray tracing of the quality mode on a Pro. It's weird, man. In order to support this 40 FPS mode, it actually, you have to be able to run it at 120 hertz. Like you have to have a TV that can do 120, like running through capture gear and everything. Like it reports the mode that the television is currently, or the signal that everything is being spit out at. And it's like, here it is, 4K 120. And you're like, oh yeah, 4K 120, except it's 40. I think you can get 60 out of it if you turn it to performance mode, but that's going to disable a lot of that ray tracing and a lot of that other stuff in favor of that. So it's you still have to make the same choice. You still have to make the same choices that you would have to make on a base level PS5. It's just everything is kind of kicked out another notch. I don't really fault the game for this. I really just kind of like it's just a frustrating conceptually. It's a really dumb thing that is like, here's this Pro console. You still have to do all this same. You make these same dumb choices to get the frame rate you want or whatever. But like Mark Cerny said last week, in the console space, there's a 60 frames per second is the order. No, it's not. No, it is not. No, it never is. But yeah, if you like Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands, but are tired of all this shooting guns and are more into swords, might I recommend? Because you have a base in this game, much like Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands, wherein you would find supplies all over the place and you would tag them. You'd throw a little homing thing in the, it's like literally opening up like a barrel of oil and throwing something in it and going like, now the rebels can find it. And then you get points or whatever. In this game, you have your hideout. And since you're always upgrading your hideout and you need resources to build the additional rooms and all of this, every place you go, especially places that are not necessarily story-driven mission stuff, like if you just like find like, here's the Mount Congo retreat and there's just a bunch of bad guys hanging out, you can just you wander around there, stab all those guys, and then there's just resources everywhere for you to stand in front of and hold down the button to pick up and send off to your base for upgrades. Much like Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands. What I'm telling you is that playing Assassin's Creed Shadows led to me reinstalling Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands. Which is a clumsy ass video game. The gun handling is awful. Like in this day and age, it is a very like just this. None of this turning feels right. All of the shooting and handling and everything is like this feels miserable. And that was an interesting game to return to after all these years of having not played it, but I finished that game. So I was like loading up a game that had finished the game but hadn't finished every single mission. And I was like, maybe I'll go do this. And I spent some time sending up a drone and tagging enemies and doing all the stuff that you do in Wildlands and having my 3 AI guys just shoot people over and over again for me. You talk about your power fantasies in video games, like Assassin's Creed, certainly, especially with the way that I'm currently playing it, you feel incredibly powerful. But also in Wildlands, having explosive drones that you can use to mark targets, and then every 30 seconds you can just tell your guys to sink shot, kill 3 of those targets. It's super dumb. Wildlands is a heck of a game. It's a stupid video game. But it's a pretty good time. But yeah, I found the shooting to feel pretty rotten. Yeah, so if you want to play Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands, but in Japan, might I recommend Assassin's Creed Shadows? It seems very cool. Like I definitely want to keep playing it, but there's a part of me that doesn't want to touch it because of the way I am currently, like, again, having to turn the difficulty down in order to play is a really frustrating thing. Kind of all kidding aside, like I that part is extremely disappointing. And like I said, it very nearly, like I almost dropped out of this game 6 minutes after it started, because of that. And it was only because I just said, like, all right, I'll drop the difficulty down to the point where it doesn't matter, that I was really able to play it at all. And that is annoying, especially in this day and age where everyone likes to tout how great their accessibility is. The way that some of this stuff is still wrong in like very fixable ways, like really dumb kind of ways, is weird. And so it makes me question like all of the accessibility efforts taking place across the industry and like, are they actually useful? Because, like I can only speak to my particular busted ass eyes. So, I can't really speak to anyone else's experience with those sorts of things. But when I see that and see how kind of half-assed that is, it makes me wonder, like, are a lot of these other accessibility options for that we just kind of look at and go like, oh wow, there's a lot here, that seems cool. Like, is it actually terrible for people that need audio? You know, like different settings for this different stuff. I don't have the answer to that question. But I can tell you on this specific front, kind of sucks. Kind of sucks. One more weird thing about Assassin's Creed. I literally almost just said Assassin's Creed Wildlands. Let's just go with that. Assassin's Creed Wildlands. They and this is not. I'm not throwing shade at Ubisoft. I get the impression that this is just kind of how this stuff is like set up by default. But I found it a very funny thing given the history of the Assassin's Creed franchise and reviewing Assassin's Creed games. The initial thing they had to send out for people was running through GeForce Now, which was which is NVIDIA's cloud streaming platform. It was like, hey, if you want to get started immediately, we can get you up and running on GeForce Now. Otherwise, we'll have console codes and stuff like a week later. And that was still even plenty of time to play it prior to release for most of the people reviewing it. I don't know that I've ever seen that happen. Like, there's definitely been cases of like, hey, we have a preview build up on a cloud streaming service that you can look at for 3 hours and whatever. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen a review process run this way. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, oh yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot. And then I went to go fire up the GeForce Now stuff, and before it would launch the game, it said, okay, in order to play this, you have to agree that we can record your gameplay, your camera, and your microphone. And I was like, oh, I'm absolutely not clicking accept on that. Like, no. No way, not in a million years. I am fucking not doing that. For a review, absolutely not. And again, I get the impression that because it's a private playtest, anything that's I'm guessing that anything that's a private playtest on GeForce Now, because developers will sometimes use that for closed betas and some other things like that. I'm guessing that stuff is all there specifically for whatever playtest is running. I don't get the impression that Ubisoft specifically, in fact, I asked and said, hey, what the fuck? And they're like, oh, I don't know why that's there. That shouldn't, no, we're not doing anything with it. We're not recording any of that. But I still, like, I was just creeped out enough that I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do this. It's just very funny because the very first Assassin's Creed, I've told this story before, but like when they put out the very first Assassin's Creed, Ubisoft insisted that they wanted one of their people to sit in a room with our reviewer and while they played the game. At first, they were completely insistent on it. Just in case he has any questions, just in case he's got any questions, we want to be there to be able to answer any questions. And the answer was absolutely fucking not. Like, are you going to put a person in the room of every single person who buys the game so that because that's not the experience that our review, if that's not the experience the players will have, then we're not going to know. And then for a while it was like, well, what if there was just someone there for the first couple of hours in case it was like, no, like we are not fucking absolute. No, what? No. So it's very funny all these years later to have the digital equivalent of that pop up for an Assassin's Creed game. Again, I don't get the impression that Ubisoft was specifically trying to do anything fucking weird about it. I think it's just some feature built in to the playtest stuff on GeForce Now. Either way, I was like, absolutely no. So I ended up playing it on PS5 Pro. I have not seen any other version of the game. Or anything like that. So it's funny. It was funny. Like all these, like, again, decades have passed and Ubisoft is still trying to watch people play Assassin's Creed. So yeah, I don't know. That was a silly moment in the middle of all of this, and it made me wonder, like, because I saw other people, because it was one of those things where they'll let you say that you're reviewing it. You can get on social media and say I'm playing this video game, and I saw people go like, I'm playing Assassin's Creed Shadows on GeForce Now, full review to come, and I was like, And as soon as I saw that, I was like, dude, gross. Why would you do that? Why would you do this? Why would you agree to this? That seems insane. What the hell is wrong with you? And then to brag about it on social media on top of that just seems, I don't know. I would not trust, and again, they were not looking to do this. It was like, hey, if you want to get started early and your save will carry over to these other versions of the game, it was really just like, here's a way for you to get an extra week with the game, which I can't be mad at that. That's, the more time, the better. I would never, like, not in this day and age. Maybe a time will come where this stuff gains enough traction and gets popular enough down the line that you could feel comfortable reviewing a game based on your time playing it on a cloud streaming service. I would never. Even without the recording stuff, I think I was still a little bit hesitant because it was that idea of just like, well, most people are not going to play it this way, and so what if I wrote a review and said like, man, I don't know, the reaction times are fucking terrible, like, the control is so mushy and blah blah blah, and it takes forever to swing your sword. If I wrote a review like that and no one had that experience because no one else was playing it on a cloud streaming service, like, what good would that review be? Like, it's just like it's just one of those things that you just, I think, have to think about as a reviewer of just like, what are you going to, how are you going to talk about a game and play a game and whatever. So it's just, I don't know. I think it's very difficult to trust that sort of stuff right now. And again, maybe a time will come when enough people are playing on those services that's a legitimate viewpoint to offer. But right now, it just seems weird. Like, what do you, do I need to post? Yeah. Do I need to post my ping and like, at what point do I have to complain or ask like, hey, what's going on with this? Is the game meant to, it's always a difficult thing to go to a publisher and say, hey, is your game meant to feel like shit, or is there a problem? Is there like a fixable problem here? There's something, because they're always going to be very quick to go like, oh no, there's got to be a problem. Surely this isn't you. And it's frustrating. But yeah, I don't know, again, I don't think that there's any aspect of this that anyone was trying to be untoward. I don't want to, I'm certainly not saying that like, they were trying to watch me in my underwear stab people. Which was my first thought. I was like, well, I'm going to play this whole game naked. Deal with it. But I don't think it would even turn on the camera. Like whatever. I would see the light on the camera if it came on, and I don't have a microphone on to begin with. But yeah, just a weird little moment in the annals of reviewing games. A little bit of extra weirdness that wrapped back around all the way back to the origins of the Assassin's Creed franchise. But yeah, I don't know. The game seems very cool. I would love it if they. Well, I don't know if I would love it. I would like to play it on its default settings. I would much rather be playing it on its default settings and be able to kind of judge the difficulty in a more clear context. But the accessibility problem pretty much prevents me from doing that, and it's annoying. Let's take one more break and we'll get into the news, and we'll be right back. It can be hard sometimes to find a nice feeling pair of underwear. You know what I mean? You end up with these, you're like, hey, there's 20 pairs in one pack, and you get them home and it's like sandpaper against your freaking skin. Or sometimes you get some and the cut is just crazy and you're like, who would wear this? This is too tight in the wrong spots. It's loose here. None of this feels right. Well, MeUndies has something for you. That's right. The contoured pouch and ball caddy. It's a micromodal sling that keeps things separated and lifted. And that's a nice level of support to have in your dick zone. Is that what we're calling it now? That's what, it's nice to have a little something down there that just, it feels right. But it's more than just about the cut of the underwear, of course, right? I mean, like they need to feel good too. MeUndies. I don't know what they're making these things out of. It's sustainably sourced materials, but it feels great against the skin. They've got a wide variety of styles, from all black classics to fun expressive prints. A lot of sizes, extra small to 4XL. So, it's a flattering cut for every body. And MeUndies has more than just underwear. They got a lounge collection. It's got joggers, hoodies, onesies, and more. And that fabric, that MeUndies signature fabric, it's nice. It's real nice. It's very comfy. It's breathable. It's stretchy. It's perfect for all day wear. Again, even if you're not wearing your underwear all day long, I have to say, it's nice for partial day wear as well. If you're not happy with your first pair of undies, it's on MeUndies. That's right. Their problem-free philosophy will keep you happy. That's the goal, right? Oh, you want underwear that's just like, hey, nice. This is nice. This is nice underwear. This feels good. I'm happy about this when you put it on in the morning. And that's the contoured pouch and ball caddy. It's a real nice pair of underwear. It's a real nice pair of underwear. It feels great. Feels great on the body. You should check it out. Good things come in big packages at MeUndies. Get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping on orders of $75 or more at MeUndies.com/Jeff, and enter the promo code Jeff. That's MeUndies.com/Jeff, and the code Jeff for 20% off. MeUndies, comfort from the outside in. All right, we're back. Let's get into the news. Over at PlayStation, they've started a brand new internal studio. Word on this comes from videogameschronicle.com, who I guess listened to a podcast from Jeff Gerstmann, interviewing Jason Blundell, who you may remember as the longtime face of Call of Duty Zombies mode. Like, he was the guy that was... there's a ton of interviews. It's funny to go out there and which I, in the run up to interviewing Jason, I watched a lot of interviews with him from like people that are way deep into the Call of Duty Zombies stuff. And it's all of them going, well, how did you do this? And what did you do? How do you hide the secrets? Now, and him talking about like, oh, well, we know not to hide it in the map editor because people do this and like people trying to grill him for like the last hidden secrets, which he said when I was speaking with him, that there are still things in those Black Ops games that he was a part of that people haven't found yet, which is pretty crazy. Of course, yeah. So he mentioned that offhand at the end, that yes, he's starting a new studio that is part of PlayStation, and that is called Dark Outlaw Games. They've got social media accounts and logos. It's a good looking logo. I had not seen the logo when we had this conversation. But that podcast is up in this podcast feed right before this episode of this podcast. So go back and listen to that if you haven't. It's a fun hour and change. It's also on YouTube. And there's a video version as well. We covered a lot of ground. Like he had a lot of interesting credits. He's done a lot of interesting things over the course of his career. He's been in it for a couple of decades here, and he worked on N-Gage games. Like, he was at Nokia for a period of time, like approving game design docs for third-party developers, and like just like a crazy wide swath of experience. He worked on Catwoman. Did the whip stuff for Catwoman, which is awesome. But yeah, so go ahead and check that out. That was a lot of fun. And that is in some ways the backdoor pilot for the interview podcast that I'm looking to get off the ground here in the relatively near future. Just got to figure out. You can't, turns out you can't have an RSS feed for a podcast unless it has a name. And I had like 6 names that I kind of liked, and every single name was taken. Every single one. Like, this podcast, this is a good name. Like, oh, nope, this is a shitty improv podcast that someone started 7 weeks ago. Damn it. Can't use that. And so I'm burning through names. I have like a backup name that's my like I give up name. It's just like, this was fine, whatever. But yeah. Go listen to that. It was a really interesting time talking about all that different stuff. And again, yeah, in as a part of that, he is now building a studio, a new first party studio, which Sony, not every day that they start one of those, I guess. So that's a big deal. And yeah, I think his time at Psygnosis, all this stuff. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun speaking with Jason. So go check that out. PlayStation is also working with People Can Fly on something. This is something that People Can Fly disclosed as part of a like regulatory filing. This is also according to videogameschronicle.com. That there is a project that they are working on with PlayStation IP. And that's really kind of all we know about it. It's a work for hire agreement with Sony, and that they are creating a prototype based on one of its IPs. But that's kind of the full detail there. So this is not, someone saying, "Oh, Bulletstorm." This is not Bulletstorm 2. This would be a Sony IP, presumably. So it's the new Killzone. No, I don't know. Like, who can say, really? But People Can Fly has made a lot of shooters over the years, and there are not that many PlayStation IPs out there that involve shooting. So one could dream that maybe this would be something like that, but it could be something else entirely. People Can Fly has worked on a bit of a variety of games over the years, for sure. I'm curious to see that. In my mind, People Can Fly is always the people that are just making like weird shooters with crazy weapons. And then they've done a pretty good job of that over the years. So, but yes, the story here also reminds us that Take-Two had People Can Fly working on a co-op action RPG that was codenamed Project Dagger. But that got canceled. At some point, so presumably this is not just a revitalized version of that. But I guess I was gonna say, well, then that means they worked on RPGs. But I suppose co-op action RPG could mean a lot of things. That Outriders was a co-op action RPG. If you think about it, we tend to think about it as a shooter, but it very much is a you're getting gear. It is an action RPG in that kind of traditional sense. So, I don't know. Maybe they're working on something in that vein, or maybe that's what they were working on for Take-Two, and now it's something else completely. All we can really do is grasp at straws and speculate based on everyone's history. But we'll see if anything comes of it. It sounds like that they're on the hook for a prototype, which isn't necessarily even a guarantee that they're going to be working on a full game. Microsoft is bringing artificial intelligence to the Xbox. Finally, everyone's favorite technology is in your video games. Copilot, which is a very easy to uninstall thing, provided that you're used to using the registry editor or the group policy editor inside your copy of Windows 11. You can get that stuff out of there pretty easily. Copilot for gaming is going to be coming to the Xbox for Xbox insiders in the relatively near future. They gave a brief demo of this and talked about it on their podcast. If you remember last week, I said, get ready for a bunch of AI shit because it's GDC week, and here we are. This is... I had an idea, and this is something that only Microsoft can do because they're the console manufacturer. And so the idea I had was way more removed from this. But, back when I worked for the company that owned GameFAQs, I thought, like, man, there's got to be a way to get, let me use a voice assistant in conjunction with playing a game, I want to be able to, like, when I get stuck in a game, I want to be able to say, hey, what the fuck do I do here? And have, whatever Alexa, whatever fucking voice assistant thing respond to me and say, here's what you need to do next. And GameFAQs had decades and decades of data like this. But, like the actually hooking that up and making, as someone with no access to any of the tools on the console manufacturer side and whatever else, that would be an impossible thing to actually do. Well, now Microsoft's just going to do it for you and build it in. And so the idea would be that you could ask, they have some Video Games Chronicle kind of documented some of the prompts. In an example showing during the video, a Minecraft player picked up some wood and then entered a text prompt asking, okay, I've got some wood. What can I do with that? Copilot for Gaming then replied by telling the player to open their inventory and place the oak logs into crafting area to turn them into wooden planks. Another example shows the player on their phone app asking the AI, I want to get back into Age of Empires 4. Can you install it? The AI then installs the game for a player and offers to give a recap of what happened the last time they played the game. The implication there, if it can give you a recap of what happened the last time you played the game, I assume that means that they're going to bring Recall to the Xbox, which Recall is the Windows technology that takes screenshots of your screen on a regular basis so that you can ask the AI things about things you did in the past, and it will have a series of screenshots to look at that maybe includes your credit card numbers and who knows, God knows what else. So as long as you trust that no bad actor will ever get access to that pile of screenshots ever in the history of ever, and that Windows will remain completely secure for the rest of time, that seems like maybe not a great thing. Of course, on a gaming hardware, on a gaming platform, that you're not entering your credit card the same way, and presumably they would not take screenshots of the UI where your credit card would be shown. They have a little bit more control over it there, so it's probably not as risky in that environment. But still, my assumption again is that they're not saying specifically that they are bringing Recall to the Xbox, but that's my thought on it, is if they want to do that sort of thing of like recapping what you did the last time you played the game, either that's limited to story-driven games where they can very easily say, oh, at this point in the game you've done this, or they're going to be watching you play the game. A computer is going to watch you play so that it can give you the lowdown on what the fuck you did. A third example is you trying to pick a character in Overwatch, but your main has been selected, and so you ask the AI what to pick instead. Echo's taken, but Cassidy would be a solid pick with this team, the AI replies. His mid-range hit scan and Mercy's damage boost will work great on Ilios Ruins. Plus, you've done great with him on this map before. Which just sounds like plug-in names here. Like, it is such a... sure. This is something, again, that it's almost like it's... And I don't have these corporate ties anymore, so I don't really give a shit deep down. Other than I definitely give a shit conceptually that this is probably a very bad thing, and it's not a fair use situation in any way, shape, or form. But much like Google will, write a bunch of AI summaries of web pages instead of you clicking to the web page, this is just the sort of thing that eventually eliminates the need for anyone to ever go to GameFAQs and kills that entire thing once and for all, right? I mean, like people are generating that data for free and uploading it and all this other stuff, and then what? It just gets subsumed by some AI. Like you can see examples of that now. Like you can ask Google's stuff questions about games or try to get game information, and you can watch it try to summarize shit that's on GameFAQs. And yeah, that stuff's frustrating. And then the eventual end result of stuff like this is that no one generates the data to begin with. No one writes the FAQ in the first place because it just gets yanked up into this thing and turned into something that is often wrong, or, you know, like that. I think that's the other thing, is like, at least this is something low stakes like video gaming, and not like, I don't know, your health information or whatever. But like, when we think about how frequently incorrect LLMs are when it comes to answering what seem like very basic questions, the idea of having it like, oh, we're going to have it help you with all your games. It's like, yeah, I find that very hard to believe. Or no, I find it very easy to believe that they would roll something like this out. I find it very hard to believe that it will not make mistakes. I mean, Apple just shoved you know, they were looking to shove a bunch of fucking of this type of stuff, context awareness and what have you, into Siri, and they just pushed it back a year or more. Presumably, you know, like supposedly because the correct response rate was way too low for their tastes. I wonder if they will end up like winning somehow. I wonder if Apple will end up coming out the other end of this benefiting, because like they're going to delay all this AI or a lot of this AI integration stuff. I wonder if they delay it past the bubble bursting, and then they're like, oh, now we don't have to do it at all. Great. Awesome. That said, Siri still needs to be better. Siri is still fucking bad by even the original metrics. It sucks. It's just that like putting their fucking dumb AI fucking shit into it was not going to make it better. Or better enough, I guess I should say. Yeah, so apparently they will be rolling this out for phones for Xbox insiders relatively soon, so you can test this out and provide feedback. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like I think that there's room for some kind of like feedback or advice or whatever, right? Like PlayStation tries to do it with like, and they recently opened this up to like users because developers weren't doing it. But like this idea of like building a strategy guide into the game itself is not new, and it's been done a few different ways over the years. But like the ability for it to be way more context sensitive and way more aware of what the actual moment is and where you're actually stuck. Because it's very easy to like look at a quest log and go, oh, you're doing this quest, here's how to do it. But like the thing you want is like, I'm stuck here staring at this thing. What the fuck is this? And if you're at a point where you're asking for help, like you want something that's going to pop up and say like, oh, you're not in the right place for this. Or like, hey, you come back here later. You don't have the right thing for this. And that's something that games should be better about signaling internally themselves. It's not something that, you know, we need to bolt on a bunch of extra fucking stupid technology. Like these are problems that are solvable in way more accurate ways right now today. If you wanted to build that, but instead, because this is the hot new tech, they're just gonna like, well, we can just train it on this and fuck it. I don't know, whatever, man. We'll just train it on the thing and it'll work, right? And like, well, yeah, no, but yeah, sort of, probably, occasionally, mostly. But is that what you want? Like the very idea that people are like trusting any AI thing to do anything for them. I can do it as fast myself, because, you know, if I do it myself, I don't have to then go check their work. Because who's out there? I mean, and the answer is plenty of people are, because they're fucking dopes. But, you know, plenty of people are just going with whatever the computer tells them and just like, yeah, okay. And you know, we've had some hilarious moments over the last year of that biting people in the ass. But like, it's easier to just do the search yourself and look it up yourself and figure it out yourself and write it yourself. And like, you know, like this, instead of like this, here's a thing that might be wrong. I don't know. It would take me longer to figure out if it was wrong than it would to just do it myself in anything that I was calling upon this stuff for text. I mean, you know, like whatever, I'm not, you know, for text specifically, like I'm not drawing things and then going like, fuck, this picture of John Cena has 3 dicks. That's the right number. How come the AI keeps making him F5? You know, like stuff like that. More reports about the Oblivion remake, everyone's favorite Elder Scrolls game, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Reports coming from the Nate the Hate podcast via Video Games Chronicle, who has corroborated this with their own sources. But I guess this is coming sooner rather than later. The idea here is that Virtuous is working on this game and that it may release before June. And so that is pretty much right around the corner at this point. It's surprising that this hasn't really been like announced or confirmed. It was in some court documents at some point, and I don't know if it's something that they just think they're going to like try to shadow drop or something, even though it's not a particularly well kept secret. But the reports on this is that this is a remake of Oblivion running in Unreal Engine 5, which I don't know. That sounds cool. Oblivion, we were just talking about it. We were just talking about it in the context of the greatest Xbox 360 games ever made. And Oblivion I maintain that Oblivion is an early Xbox 360 game that helped make that platform. It helped distinguish that platform. It helped that platform stand out and helped that platform move a lot of units, man. If you don't remember, if you were not there for that, everyone was playing Oblivion. It didn't matter if you had never played a fucking role-playing game ever before in your life. Like, it was one of the first big games on the Xbox 360. And I had friends who were just like, I would never in a million years peg them as the sort of person who would have played a game like that in a million. Like, okay, you're sure, okay. Everyone right at launch dove into this game like crazy, and I did too. It's a great fucking game. I like Oblivion. I enjoyed Oblivion way more than Skyrim. Obviously Skyrim benefits from years of technological advancements, and there's stuff that Skyrim does that Oblivion certainly could not do. But in terms of my raw enjoyment playing those games at their time of release, dude, Oblivion, unfucking beatable. Unbeatable. Skyrim, it's fine. I'll put it this way. I finished Oblivion and wanted to play more. So yeah, if that ends up hitting before June, like I'll probably be done with Avowed by then. So yes, I might be back in the mode for another game of that style. Sure, man. People seem to think that Nintendo is going to make GameCube controllers for the Switch 2. This is an interesting, like, this one's a bit of a reach, but also you look at it and you go like, I could see it. There is an FCC filing for a controller that Nintendo has filed, and the product code matches, this is according to Eurogamer, the product code matches other Switch 2 components. It doesn't seem like it's a new Switch 2 controller based on some of the functionality listed in the patent. It doesn't have NFC support, which, Pro controllers and Joy-Cons and stuff like that do have NFC support. It does have wireless Bluetooth support, which is something that has been in, which Eurogamer notes, was something that was in the other kind of online, the new old controllers that Nintendo released for, the SNES and when they brought SNES games to the Switch and Genesis games and all that sort of stuff. So one of the big ideas, one of the big reasons why people are pointing to this and saying we think this is specifically a GameCube controller is because as part of the patent, they list the location for the label. And so the patent is literally just a rounded rectangle, and then the label for like where the model number and the text on the back of a controller is offset. It's not back center the way it is on most normal controllers these days. It's down and off to the side in like one of the bottom corners, which when you think about the weird split nature of a GameCube controller, that is where the label is on the back of a GameCube controller. It's on the back of like the C stick off to the side. And so people are taking this rectangle and looking at it and going, that's a fucking GameCube controller. And you know what? I think I agree. I think I'm on board with this. I think I'm like, yeah, clearly that's got to be a goddamn GameCube. Why else would it be off to the side like that unless it's a goddamn GameCube? It's a compelling case. So the people that are doing this work out there online going absolutely bonkers staring at FCC patents, I salute you. This is, and I hope that this is the case. Even as someone who has no need for a GameCube controller ever in the history of ever, I hope that this is the case. And you wonder at this point, does that mean that, hey, we're going to get GameCube games as part of the Nintendo Switch online service? Will they bring that out for Switch 2 and make it part of that offering? Like, maybe. I mean, they're out of other platforms, right? So presumably they would do this. Also, Smash Brothers players would probably appreciate a new run of GameCube controllers of some kind. This is like the GameCube controller is really good for playing a very small, specific number of GameCube games that benefit from the two-step triggers on a GameCube controller. Which, technologically speaking, I think that idea of here's an analog trigger that has a click at the end that you can click in all the way for like, now you're going turbo fast, or whatever you use it for, a fucking water pack or some stupid bullshit. I think that that's a really neat idea. I don't think very many games really used it or used it all that well. Like a lot of Nintendo's controller quirks, it's stuff that like Nintendo uses and goes, this is badass, right? And then people go like, oh yeah, this is neat. And then no one else ever uses it. It's not like when I'm playing the GameCube version of aggressive inline, I don't need those types of triggers and all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah. We'll see. I will see if this ends up being a GameCube controller. Like I said, I'm on board. This has to be a GameCube controller. I refuse to believe it's anything else. Mountaintop Studios, who you may have heard of, they are the developers of a game called Spectre Divide, which was like a Counter-Strike game, but you controlled two bodies at the same time. It was an idea that you could kind of toggle between the two and send your body to another location. And so like that was kind of the quirk that made it more than just like, hey, here's kind of a Counter-Strike thing. They are going to be shutting down relatively soonish here, sometime over the next 30 days. They have given an update on social media. This happened fast. I will just kind of give you the bullet points or the kind of top level of their letter. They say here, it's been 2 weeks since we launched Spectre Divide Season 1 Flashpoint. We're incredibly grateful for the positivity and support that you've shown over that short time. Unfortunately, the Season 1 launch hasn't achieved the level of success we needed to sustain the game and keep Mountaintop afloat. They get into a few numbers about active players, and we were optimistic about the first week, but as time has gone on, we haven't seen enough active players and incoming revenue to cover the day-to-day costs of Spectre and the studio. we're out of funding to support the game. This means we'll be closing our doors at the end of this week. So that would be last week the studio closed down. And the game itself will continue for a little while longer. I'm trying to see if they put a date on the game. It says it'll be taken offline within the next 30 days, I think is the report here. So yeah, 2 weeks after their launch of season 1, which also was their console launch, the game had launched on PC and they had done some closed betas and other stuff like that. But like, this is like 2 weeks after they rolled out on console that they're like, nope, not going to happen for us. Time to go. I think that's that's a fucking bummer, man. I don't necessarily like, I don't want to dance on the grave of, whatever, but like, this game never sounded like anything other than a game that was going to have a fate very similar to this. This is faster than I think anyone would think. Like, it's still shocking when a game shuts down really quickly, right? But like, at no point, I'm searching my email for the name of the games for Spectre Divide. The first email I have is July 23rd, 2024, where they invited me to, where a PR person said, we're working on a new tactical shooter from some of the developers behind Apex Legends, Valorant, Overwatch, Counter-Strike, Battlefield, and more. And this was basically them saying, hey, we're doing a thing. You'll get hands-on with the game. Like, do you want to come, or do you want to come to a Discord server to play this game at a specific day and time? It was a Friday, but I couldn't make it. But also, like, honestly, I will say from the get-go, their pitch on this game did not sound appealing to me in the least. I'll read this sentence. The game has the support of incredible investors, including Shroud, Tariq, It's Timmy, Sacriel, Zed, and Carnage. On top of being an investor, Shroud has also taken a gameplay consultant role, working directly on enhancing the game. I don't like, I read that and went like, oh, I don't want to be any part of this. I don't like, what is, like, so a bunch of streamers have invested in a Counter-Strike game? Like, that sounds like a fucking Ponzi scheme. Like, what they can be like, you got to buy my skin. Like, like, what is that? And so the whole thing just sounded incredibly sketchy out of the gate with that stuff. Where it's just like, if that's, if day one of you announcing, hey, this is the game we're making, and day one you're saying these big streamers have invested in it, like, what? Nah, I'm good. They would go on August 1st when that embargo was up to formally announce the game and put out a gameplay trailer. Let's see here. I'm kind of going through the rest of my emails on this. They had a closed beta that ran August 13th to August 21st. I think I did download it and play a couple of games of it then, and came away from it going like, yeah, if I wanted to play a game like this, I would play Counter-Strike. If I wanted to play Counter-Strike, I would play Counter-Strike. Like, it's, the idea of like, hey, you can split between two bodies and you have two characters in the game or whatever. Like, sure, yeah. But like, again, if the shooting in the core of it is Counter-Strike, like I don't play a lot of Counter-Strike. So the idea of playing a game that's Counter-Strike, but with some other kind of nebulous and not that exciting stuff, just like conceptually, I don't know what developers that's got to be hard, man. But also, it's fucking Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike has been around for decades. It's been massively popular. Like, did you start development on this when CS2 looked like a little bit of, like a little sketchy, like having this game that is still a lot like that, despite having its own, kind of flavor and own hooks or whatever? Like, you come back to it going like, yeah, the shooting is this, they're kind of making a Counter-Strike. And so it just, for out of the gate, you're like, okay, are you going to pull people away from Counter-Strike with this and keep them there? Like, no, dude. Like, even I spent a little bit of time because, I was just fascinated by the way that they announced this game. And so this Shroud, the Shroud guy that, was an investor and a gameplay consultant on the game, I ended up watching some of him streaming it, and some clips went around as well. But he seemed as checked out and as fucking bored of it. Like he was like, it was a closed beta and he was like trying to matchmake and it was taking a little bit of time. And he was like sitting there going like, come on guys, I'm going to talk to the team. Oh, like he didn't seem excited about it. He went on to go play another game once his little sponsor block or whatever was over, and, seemed way less down on whatever he was playing instead. Yeah, Nanopus says he literally talked shit on the game and then would log out of his own game as soon as he could to play Marvel Rivals. Great work, everyone. Good job signing up these great brand ambassadors for your product. I'm sure that was money well spent. Like, this is just a fucking bummer, dude. And so, like, yeah, out of the gate, like, why would you fucking do this? Like, that doesn't give your game an advantage. Like, sure, you get these people to stream it, but if they're going to stream it and shit on it, and they have a financial incentive, presumably, for the game to succeed, and they're still going to be that way about the game, where'd your money go? Just tactically just seems like a bad idea. Whatever. Like, I don't. Whatever. I don't want to point, like, I don't want to waste a bunch of time pointing fingers. Like, it's a fucking bummer. Like, a bunch of people are out of work. Like, this sucks. A bunch of experienced developers took a crack at a thing and it failed. Like, it's a tale as old as time these days. But, like, it was not hard to look at this from a mile away and go, yeah, I don't, I'm kind of checking to... Also, a weird focus on, like, again, I want to pick out, like, pick apart PR messaging or whatever. This is from September 5th, 2024. Just wanted to make a quick check-in to ask you, now that Spectre Divide is released, do you have plans to play, stream, or create content for it? If you're not one of the 22,000 plus players currently playing, we would love to know why or why not. And if there's anything that would make it an easy choice to start that I could communicate to the dev team. Like, that's not a thing that you normally hear about. That's not the type of outreach you normally get about a game. And what I'm not going to respond and say like nothing about this game is appealing to, like, I played some of this. I don't want to play any more of it. Like, and then they would go on to hold preview events for the console version of the game, again via Discord, and so like they really tried to get it in front of people. Like, I will give them that. Like, the money they spent on PR, the PR team that they hired for this was very upfront and very, like, frequent when it comes to the different kind of moments that this game had over its run. So I'll give them that. But I do think that everything about the approach of, like, hey, these pro streamers invested in it, again, from the outset, the whole thing just sounded shady. Or like, hey, if the game was good, you would not need to tout this as, like, this would not be in the first thing you're saying about the game. Like, hey, we got a shooter coming up and these guys are investing in it. Like, no thanks. I don't want to I don't want to be a part of that. Don't you want to? And, like, the other thing that this game did that I do see a fair amount of, whatever. Now that we're talking about it, let's talk about it. Sometimes people will hit you up about a game and they will say, well, so-and-so's covering it, as if that's going to make you go like, oh, well, shit. Like, I've had people say, like, do you want to join on this Discord server for this preview event? IGN will be there. And I'm literally like, that makes me want to go. Like, if everyone else is covering it, why would I? Like, you're giving me reasons to go cover something else because you're telling me that the people with big YouTube channels and big SEO games are already covering it. So, like, from a business standpoint, that's a fucking downer. Like, oh, okay, well, so if it's already going to be well covered by these other outlets, then smaller outlets are not going to see any traffic on videos they do about this, because if people are interested in it, they'll just end up watching those videos. That's what you're saying. And the idea of just like, we got these streaming celebrities to invest in the, yeah, I don't know, just like a really, whatever. I don't, it sucks. This whole situation sucks. Like, I'm not going to spend any more time picking apart that aspect of it, because it's just like, at the end of the day, I think that they made a very normal game seem very sleazy with the way that they talked up this aspect of the game. And then when you look and see what that money got them with with Shroud, who's a shooter streamer, I guess. When you look and see what that money got them, what that investment got them, which is a disinterested guy dying to stop playing the game. That's terrible. That's a waste. So yeah. Also shutting down Zynga, not the whole company. Zynga has announced it is shutting down Star Wars Hunters. According to Video Games Chronicle, no refunds. Star Wars Hunters originally launched on phones and eventually came to the Nintendo Switch. I guess I didn't realize that this actually came out. I had a note in the back of my head that I was like, oh, I should try out Star Wars Hunters when it came out, because I was talking to someone prior to it launching on Switch, and the word was, hey, you know what? That game's actually pretty decent. You should check it out. It's better than it seems. Like, I know it says Zynga on it. Like, there's something into this. And so I made a note. I was like, all right, yeah, maybe I'll give this a look. But I did not realize that the game ever actually came out on Switch. It will be shutting down across all platforms. The game's final update will be released on April 15th, and the servers will last until October 1st. They issued a statement saying, thank you for your incredible support and for being part of the world of Vespara. After careful consideration, we want to let you know that the final update will be on April 15th. The game available until October 1st. We understand this news may be disappointing. We want to assure you that this decision was not made lightly. Your passion and dedication to the game and its community have meant the world to us, and we are committed to providing visibility and updates throughout the transition process. I don't really know what that would really mean in that context. All in-app purchases will be disabled on April 15th. Normally, when people say, hey, our game is shutting down, it's the same day that they pull all the money stuff. Which is sort of weird for them to take money for another month. Though it can't be that much money, because if it was a lot of money, then, hey, I guess people, they wouldn't be shutting down. There is a fact about this. I want to see their reasoning. Oh, they have it. Geez. Okay. I gotta find their Twitter account, because the link they have is not linked to in their news section. Let's see here. Okay, yes, they have a fact. If I already purchased an arena pass for season 5, will I receive a refund? The intention of the 30-day notice we are giving out between March 14th and turning off in-app purchases on April 15th is to give players enough time to max out the arena pass before the end of the season. Can I get a refund for crystals I have already purchased but have not used in-game? No. Crystal purchases will not be refunded. The intention of the 30-day notice we are giving between March 14th and turning off in-app purchases on April 15th is to give players ample time to prepare and spend the in-game currency they have purchased. Okay. No refunds. That's will the game still launch on PC? No. This decision impacts all platforms, including PC, which will no longer launch. Yeah, I don't know. The word on that game seemed to be that it was like, again, better than you might think for like a competitive game coming from Zynga, like a phone game coming to Switch and PC and all of those sorts of things, kind of maybe making you feel a little iffy about it. You know, like the word on it was that it was better than some of that pedigree maybe indicated. But I totally missed the news that it had released on Switch. I maybe would have downloaded it and taken a look at it at some point, but alas. And that's going to do it for the news. Yeah. Well, there's one more thing. Lego Pokemon. Not a game. This was very confusing to me this morning. Like I was like, when I woke up this morning, I saw word about it, Lego, like, and it just said Lego Pokemon, and I was like, oh shit, should Pokemon talk? What the fuck? Okay, all right, that's a good fit. That's a good fit for those Lego games. Like if they made a Pokemon thing, no, it's not. It's physical, actual, real Lego bricks. They're moving bricks with Pikachu on them. Watch out. Tell your kids if they get a Lego Pikachu in their Halloween basket, call the police. VideoGamesChronicle.com has this story. It's they put out a brief teaser trailer, and there are sets expected to come out in 2026. And that's kind of, there isn't really a ton of additional information. You know, there's a little bit of, the chief product and marketing officer of the Lego group, one Julia Golden, says, we are thrilled to be working with a brand that has such a deep and passionate fan base as Pokemon, partnering to give our joint audiences what they have been asking us for. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, Lego makes other Nintendo sets and all of that other stuff, so it makes sense for them to take on the Pokemon aspect of this. What do they make? What Lego sets do they make? Like a big Pokeball? Are they making just like, check it out, it's a big Pikachu? Why don't we get cool crossover brands? Why don't we get like a Ring of Honor Lego? I want to make a giant evil Uno. We get like a mystery wrestling Lego crossover. Those are compatible brands, right? You know, something that matters. Yeah, Pallet Town. Yeah. There's other. Yeah. What like when I think Lego stuff, I think cars and buildings. And maybe that's narrow-minded of me, but all the stuff I liked to build when I was buying Lego sets as a child, or they were being bought for me, was check out this cool space shuttle, or here's a bunch of bricks, you figure it out. The actual cool thing to do with Legos is to build stuff, to build your own thing. But yeah, I don't know. Like I guess you make you make the top, like, who's the top 5 Pokemon that you're making? Like you're making a Pikachu. Oh, you're making a Pikachu. You're making a big giant Pikachu. Eevee, is Eevee on the list here? Yeah, I would love a Geodude. I would let me make a big coughing. I don't want to. No, I mean, no, I'm not gonna make a big coughing. I think they should make a big coughing, but like, honestly, I'm not gonna buy a Lego set for anything. I refuse. Like, they're putting out like, it's a Lego NES. I'm like, oh, wonderful. That seems like something I would maybe want to get and put in a corner and do it, but no, thank you. No, thank you. But that makes sense. I don't know, like the Pokemon, who had it? It was like the Mega Bloks people had the Pokemon like block license prior to this, right? It makes sense for Lego for Pokemon to level up and get with the masters of the game. Still, I would be much more excited about a Lego Pokemon game. That would actually be kind of neat if I could like punch a friggin', you know, a rat-a-tat or whatever, have it fucking blow up into fucking bricks. That'd be kind of cool. I could make a giant Ash Ketchum hat out of Legos and then wear it. I don't know. Legos, man. Sorry, Lego brand bricks. Don't say Legos. There's a guy jumping through the window right now. That's going to do it for the news. Podcast@guard.bike is the email address. If you want to send in an email and have me see it, then that is a great way to do that. Chris in Minnesota writes in. It says, SodaStream energy drinks. Man, they ain't great. Yeah, you're right. You're right. They're bad. The SodaStream like fake Red Bull was like decent for fake Red Bull purposes, but I would never make it. I would never want to like make it the proper way because it just wasn't strong enough, tasted too weird, like, you know, but specifically the SodaStream like energy drink variant was we used it for fixing Four Loko. We bought it and we, you know, when they took all of the energy drink stuff out of Four Loko, we took that and poured it into Four Loko to kind of make it right, and it worked for that. That was effective. And so I would not recommend that, but you could do that. It's a thing you could spend your time doing that. But yeah, I don't know. The SodaStream stuff, I don't really have a lot of experience with it because it always just seemed like a fucking mess. Daddy Warbucks writes in and says, my wife and I recently upgraded some pieces of our PC, so I was one drive away from a bonus PC. I want to toss it under the TV so I can disconnect it from the internet and never see Mr. Beast's dumb fucking face on my home screen ever again. Oh, disconnect the TV from the internet. Right, yes. My question to you is, do you know any OS or software that would be good for this? I have a Steam controller, which seems like a good alternative to a mouse and keyboard setup. Should I go into Windows and Steam Big Picture or some weird Linux offshoot? The use it will see is mostly watching YouTube and ripped movies and TV shows. So being able to run some lighter games or run stuff through remote play might be neat as well. I don't really use any streaming services, so I don't need a bunch of apps for all that stuff. Just YouTube, a VLC equivalent, and Steam. My wife works from home, so she has a hard time wanting to sit at her work desk to play games. So maybe she'll get a lot of mileage out of remote play. Well, assuming that you're talking about having all of your videos and stuff just on this PC and you're not like building a network of devices and whatever else. I think even in that scenario, I do think something with like a good television focused interface is handy for that. I might recommend a Plex or a Jellyfin for something like that, as opposed to just like VLC, as opposed to just like double clicking on a video to watch it. Something that's more like, here's a media center that's going to catalog all of your movies and TV shows and let you kind of look at them, you know, in season order and have, you know, a very easy way to select all of that stuff. I might err on the side of going that way with it instead of just like, let me double click on this and then full screen it so I can watch this video. I think that's just clunky. I would probably go with some kind of, I would either go with Plex or Jellyfin, depending on your needs. If it's all going to run on that machine right there and you don't need fancy transcoding or anything like that, Jellyfin's transcoding is maybe not, well, also it's a PC, so you're not going to need to transcode shit. It'll just fucking play it. So yeah, Jellyfin would work great for that. You could also leave that PC on and then, you know, run a server for that stuff and access that content from other devices on your network, like your phones or what have you. There's a Jellyfin client for phone, which is handy. I think Plex is a more elegant experience. It's a little more evolved. It's been around, you know, they've revisioned a lot of things on Plex over the years, but if you don't have the needs for a full-on Plex install, which you won't really know until you get in there and do it, Jellyfin does like 90% of that stuff. It's just not as polished as the Plex experience, I would say, but it's effectively, for your purposes, it's effectively the same. So whatever interface you like more. I would, if you're watching YouTube videos and whatever else, like, I don't know, you could, you could pop up on a browser and use, if you're going to use a Steam controller or whatever. If you're going to be doing a lot of like mousing and keyboarding on this thing, I would get probably one of those like wireless Logitech keyboards that has a touchpad mouse and a full keyboard. So that you can type the things you want to type into a browser or whatever. If you're committed to that route, you could go. This is one of those paths that like you could go down this rabbit hole in a really exciting way and get fucking real weird with it and set up things that are like automatically downloading things from YouTube. And you could have like Streamlink set up to watch Twitch streams or what, there's weird rabbit holes you can go down with this stuff that would make those videos local to your PC and put them in a library so you can watch them just like your ripped movies and TV shows, as you say. You could treat YouTube the same way if you wanted to do that. You lose out on the browsing of YouTube if that's a big part of your experience. Obviously, you're probably going to want to stay in a browser. And go that way with it, but ultimately I think it depends on those sorts of use cases. But like you can get weird with this. This is how you eventually end up with a computer in your garage running like a bunch of fucking Docker containers and shit. Like this is where I'm at, man. This is how you end up buying 10 gigabit network cards, even though your internet connection is not 10 gigabits, because you're like, I want to be able to throw these files around. I want to be able to fucking throw these files around fucking fast. And so for me, that's been like set top boxes and, like I have a PC hooked up to this TV here that I don't even really use because for most of my purposes, something like a Roku ends up direct playing almost all of that stuff. And we don't allow YouTube on the TVs because the kids get into fucking bad shit. Turns out every single fucking thing, every single like TV streaming app or whatever on your Roku has a way to get that bad YouTube shit. It's so frustrating, man. We uninstalled YouTube from the TVs, but the Roku, especially, this is the current Roku. Older Rokus don't have this button, but in addition to the buttons for services like Netflix and all the other shit that they build onto all these fucking remotes nowadays, this Roku remote has a button marked guide, and this guide button brings up the live TV guide of like garbage free channels that they have on Roku. And if you uninstall the live TV app, pushing this guide button reinstalls it. No, even if you have settings to prevent people from installing apps on the Roku without a PIN number or something like that, this button gets around that and reinstalls it. And so in the kids section, they have like a 20, and some of this stuff's fine. There's it's a 24/7 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles channel, and there's a Teletubbies channel, and there's stuff that you go like, oh yeah, I don't know, my son's into some of this stuff, and that's cool. And there's a Polly Pockets channel, because apparently they made a Polly Pockets cartoon at some point. But then there's like 3 channels on there that are just like fucking YouTube girls complaining about expensive toys, which is this subgenre of like, it's like Benny Hill for children. It's like fast motion, high-pitched voices, like little girls running around and their dad chasing them, and the dad going like, and then the kid going like, oh, okay, I didn't, and it's all dubbed because none of them speak English as a first language. And so like it is this insane tier of YouTube programming that is wildly popular and successful and whatever, and there's a bunch of different channels that do it. and you get to know what these channels are over time. And there's a 24/7 channel that is just showing videos on the Roku of one of these girls. That's just like, me and daddy are going on a trip and I've got to eat. Oh, he's sick and I got to give him a shot and all this other stuff. And it's just like all these toys and scenarios and all this other stuff that they all treat like shit. It's like there's a video that starts up and she looks in her closet. She looks at her wardrobe and it's empty and she starts crying. And so her daddy runs in with 20 dresses and goes, huh? And then she goes, yay! And it's like, and eventually your kid turns to you and goes, I want 20 dresses. And you're like, fuck this shit. What the fuck? Like, you know, it is a fucking disaster. It is like, there's no individual piece of these videos that are necessarily like, it's all rated like TVY or whatever, the lowest rating. Cause it's not like it's offensive. It's not like it's violent or you know, in a meaningful way or whatever. So it's something that ends up rating really low, but from a values perspective, it is literally just like kids fucking up toys and like kids in mansions playing on water slides in their backyard and shit. That's just like sends every fucking wrong message it could. It's like way more. I would rather the kids watch some fucking Tom and Jerry style violence than this shit, because this is like a deep seated like consumer. Like it's fucked, dude. You can block individual channels. I did find a way to remove individual channels, to hide them. You can't block them. There's no way, there's no parental settings that let you block that completely. It's built into the Roku. There's no real way around it. But you can hide the individual channels. So I hid them. And I had an app installed on the TVs for a thing called Badanamu, which we've talked about before. Badanamu is a YouTube channel I think it comes out of Korea. There's a bunch of Chinese language versions of some of the videos, which is maybe a little telling as well about some of the audience they have. But I believe it's a South Korean animation company that makes. Anyway, it's a bunch of counting videos and it's like, you know, kind of 3D pre-rendered stuff. It's not Cocomelon. It's like these are better songs, and generally better material. And you know, my first daughter watched a fair amount of it when she was growing up, and now she's afraid of it, which is, I don't know, it's weird. I don't know. I had to talk her down the other night because she was scared of a song she heard earlier in the day. You know, kid stuff. I went through the same thing when I was a kid. Anyway, they make an app for Badanamu that is separate from YouTube. It's like, well, okay, we're not going to keep YouTube installed, and I'm not just going to, and the answer is I do actually need to download all of these videos directly and just store them locally, because that's just how it's going to have to be. Because the Badanamu app is partnered with some other fucking thing that, like, if you go to the more section, you can find things that aren't Badanamu, including the same fucking girl complaining about her dresses. Literally the exact same one. I'm like, oh, cool. Okay, well, I can hide these and then that'll be the end of that and it'll be gone. And oh, wait, no, it's fucking back. Like, these kids of mine are already too fucking smart. They know how to dig. They know where to look. They know how to find stuff. I put PIN number codes on my wife and I's Plex account. And stupid me, I'm like, well, I'll just, because I want her to be able to remember it. I'll just make hers 1111. That lasted for a good long time. The other day, my daughter turned to me and said, I know mommy's code. She had figured it out. She had cracked the code and gotten into it. They don't want to watch R-rated movies. Like, like they don't want to watch most stuff. Like, there's stuff on there that, it's a bunch of stuff that is not kid appropriate, right? But like, she figured her way into the thing. She told me about it, so I'm like, well, fuck, all right. So I changed the code, and that's that. Whatever. She won't get into it again, I'm sure. Now, maybe, hopefully. But yeah, I don't know. These kids are too smart. And they want to watch some bad shit. Most of the stuff they watch is fine, but like, they want this. They are drawn to this, like these videos of kids playing with toys. this YouTube shit is like they can't get enough of it. It's an interesting, the technology of it all is an interesting struggle. Patrick Klepek has been running a newsletter called Crossplay, where he's talking about, the gaming as a parent and all of that sort of stuff. He produced a PDF that's like a really good, well-documented breakdown of all of the account settings on a PlayStation 5, about setting up a child account and all of that sort of stuff, and the things you need to do on privacy settings. And it's a really deep dive into that stuff I looked at it, it's like, this is great. Except if I create an account on the PlayStation for my children, then that means that they won't earn me trophies when they play games. And I just can't have that. So my son is playing the PJ Masks game on my account. My daughter is playing Sonic Superstars on my account because I've got to get these. I'm paying for the games. These are my, I'm not paying for them. These are my damn trophies. So unfortunately, we're at an impasse. Let's see here. What other emails do we have here? Andrew from Houston writes in and says, I'm about to play Chrono Trigger for the first time, and I can't decide if I would rather experience it on my Mister with my CRT or just play it via RetroArch on a PC monitor for the retro achievements. I value the experience of playing on a CRT, but I also love achievements. Which way should one experience an old game for the first time, and why? Thanks. Listen, we just got done talking about this. I like retro achievements a lot. I think it's a really great site and service, and the retro achievement stuff is just super fun. They've got leaderboards, they've got all this silly stuff. As long as you've got, and it's a great way, because they're games that, everyone can get their hands on. It's a great way to do competitions and stuff with your friends. And it's a goofy way to replay some of these games, and it's a handy way, I find, to have a guidepost through the sea of old games that surrounds us, right? You end up in that kind of like choice paralysis of like, there's literally 70,000 games sitting on this hard drive. What am I going to play? And so retro achievements end up kind of being like, oh, well, I'm going to play this, and I was meaning to play this game anyway, and that sounds like that's stuff I would do, combined with that's some fun stuff, and it, sometimes it drives you to play a game in a different way, like they're community made, community run, so the quality of the achievements can vary a little bit. But I would say the same thing about professionally designed achievements on Xbox 360 games and beyond. I'll tell you, as someone who does not value a CRT all that much, though the fake scan lines and things that a RetroTink 4K can do on a modern screen is really getting impressive these days. I would go with whatever is more convenient, because I think, as someone who plays a lot of modern games and is trying to keep current with modern games, it's very easy for me to start a game, an older game, and then never make it back to it. And then a year later, go through the same process of like, oh, I should play this game. And then you play the first 2 hours of Phantasy Star 2 and then go, all right, I should start over. And then you revisit it and you're like, sometimes you still have the save. Sometimes you've lost that directory. Oh, now I'm backing up my saves in my emulator saves via a WebDAV server. And that's actually kind of cool. But you get back to it a year later and you go like, oh man, I don't remember where I was or what I need to do. I should probably start over. And then you end up starting over again. So I would play wherever is most convenient for you as a means to get you to remember to play it more often. That's something, because I'm playing a lot of other games all the time and everything, like I kind of need that. And so that leads me to the PC more often than not. I think if I'm doing any like, serious stuff, or like, there are situations where like, software emulators are not what they need to be for a particular platform, and maybe the FPGA based approach is better. I like to do that. When I'm playing old games with my kids, we play on the Mister, because it's just an easier interface for me to fire up and pull up for them and hand them a controller and they play on the TV, as opposed to playing on the PC, where my son loves to just mash the keyboard. And because I have all these other apps open all the time, that wreaks all kinds of havoc with things. He's sending garbage messages to Discord channels. He sent Sebmal, who is a popular streamer, a popular Piano 3 streamer. He sent Sebmal a message on PSN, bragging about a PJ Masks trophy that he had earned. There's like one of those automatic, like, hit the button to share this with somebody. And then the last message I had received on PSN was a message from Sebmal from 2019, talking about Death Stranding, I believe. And then he had just hit whatever buttons that needed to like share this PJ Masks moment with him. And I was like, oh, what the fuck? So I had a moment there where I was thinking I should set up a child account and all this other stuff. And then I remembered, got to get these trophies. The whole point of having these kids, if I'm not getting trophies out of it, right? So yeah, I would go with whatever is more convenient for you to play. Whatever you will remember to play more often, as opposed to, if you've got to like, okay, now I need to go to the CRT, I need to remember to set all this stuff up and do this. And, if you're putting those barriers in the way, sometimes that can be enough to just not do it. And, or just not remember that you're doing it. So if you're that type of person, I would go with whatever is going to be more convenient for you, what you're going to remember to do more often. Speaking of Death Stranding, Levi wrote in from Minnesota to say, I got banned from the Death Stranding subreddit. I spent an evening killing everyone in a camp. I bagged their bodies up and threw them into the back of my truck and took a screenshot with the caption, "Today's haul," and was banned. Super excited for Death Stranding 2, obviously. Good, great. I'm going to say that's very good. Also, you deserve what you get. David from Texas writes in and says, will Call of Duty switch to a 2-year cycle at some point? I feel like every year we get rumors and inside info that the next Call of Duty is in dev trouble because of the super fast turnaround times for each one. With the Switch 2 needing its own port due to the Activision legal stuff, do you think Microsoft finally switches to a 2-year cycle soon? Maybe doing like a huge update in the off year to the current game could work well. I just wonder how much they'll be able to keep this up despite the massive amount of cash they make with a yearly release. So yeah, that's the rub, right? That's the thing that's always prevented them from doing this, is they sell so many copies of the game. They are selling so many $70+ versions of the game at launch that that is a better move for them to launch a game every year. And so they've built studios and they've built processes and they've built all of this stuff around the idea of like, if we have enough studios working on this, then that's how we get an annual game. And that's generally worked. Some interesting, again, that Jason Blundell interview that ran yesterday, he worked at Treyarch from like the World at War days, or the Call of Duty 3 days, actually, all the way up through like Black Ops 4 and beyond. And he has some stories in there that like, hey, some of these games, despite having 2 years, because we worked on some things that didn't work out and some things that, that basically the entire game was made in 9 months. and so, what that says to me is they're capable of making a game in 9 months. So maybe we only need one studio and have them make one game a year. Because if you only need 9 months to make, no. But no, I think they need multiple studios working around the clock, year round, multiple years to kind of keep that machine going. And unless something dramatic changes about the way money flows into the Call of Duty franchise, I don't see them making any change to it whatsoever. You could argue that, you know, maybe Game Pass eventually makes a change there, but in a world where they launched the game on Game Pass, but it still is like a best-selling game, the best-selling game of the year, even when you remove all the Game Pass purchases and everything, because people bought it on PC and the people bought it on PlayStation and what have you, there's really not a strong incentive for anyone to change a damn thing about Call of Duty's release cadence. Or at least not a good business incentive. Like maybe that would crush people a little less, but I don't know what the vibe is at these studios, at the Call of Duty studios these days, if they feel like this is like nonstop eternal crunch, or if they feel pretty good about where things are at. I mean, they could loosen it up a little further, I'm sure. Because they eventually did try to change to a 3-studio setup by bringing Sledgehammer into the mix, and that had, you know, mixed results, right? Because I think it led to what the modern approach to it all is you have the main studios and support studios and all of these different companies kind of working on different parts of the game at different times. You know, when Infinity Ward blew up and the court case happened and all of that stuff, and we, you know, eventually got Respawn, that led to, you know, suddenly Sledgehammer is coming in to work on big parts of the Infinity Ward Call of Duty game, and then Sledgehammer has no time to make the Sledgehammer game the following year, and so a lot of those kind of the three studio system they were maybe looking to set up there got really disrupted, and they kind of never went back from that because you had a lot of games on fire in different ways, and everyone had to pitch in here and there, and you know, you see Treyarch credits on Infinity Ward games, you see Sledgehammer credits on every one of these games, and of course you see Raven and I don't know, Beanox and whoever, you know, whoever else is part of that support system these days as well. And so I look at it more as like they're kind of making 3 different games, if not 4, because they're making a campaign, they're making a competitive multiplayer, they're making a zombies mode, and they're continuing to make Warzone. And I look at that as like, okay, you've got different teams working on different parts of it. Like I think Raven is primarily the Warzone studio these days, right? But they are still, I believe that's the case, but you still see these games having to align with the current year of Call of Duty. Like, okay, this time we're doing these guns, and so we want to bring these guns in, and now we need to balance 3 years of guns. How do we do this? Like, for example, in Warzone currently, you can play as John McClane in some of those old, you know, Nicki Minaj, and, you know, you'd still do John. Anyway, you do Nicki Minaj, I know that much. And Snoop Dogg, characters that were not in this year's game, but were in the previous year's game. You can still use them there. And so they're keeping multiple years of Call of Duty alive inside of the Warzone product. It's fucking crazy, man. It's a crazy machine, and the machine breaks in different ways every year, I'm sure, and they have to like rush to fix it because they're making their date. And I think it's a gargantuan effort that obviously like thousands of people probably touch those games every single year, right? When it comes to making them. And I think they, by and large, do a really good job of making it. You could argue that like some of that stuff could be split into different games and whatever. But again, right now they're putting out a game that is the best-selling game just about every year it comes out. Unless something changes dramatically on that front, I don't see a reason for them to change. If anything, Microsoft is changing in ways that further that mentality, right? You know, Microsoft is not into any exclusives whatsoever in its own. You know, there was just the Starfield Creators Club mod site thing. Someone uploaded a mod and it showed up as PlayStation compatible, which obviously Starfield has not been announced for PlayStation, but there was something on their back end somewhere that has a PlayStation logo on it, which that probably wouldn't exist unless, and they have since cleaned it up and whatever, but it just sounds like something leaked onto the production server that shouldn't have. You know, Microsoft is not going to make games that only appear on Xbox. That's not where the money is for them. They're obviously they've gone all the way in this direction, and hey, they're This is the thing they're doing. They're making the rest of their studios more like the Call of Duty situation of like, no, we want to put this out on every platform and all of this stuff. And we want to put it out as many places as possible. So no, I don't see Call of Duty switching to a 2-year cycle. Again, unless it falls off in a major way. Then I think once that's on the table, like once you get to a point where you're like, this isn't working anymore and we need to make a change, or like, hey, we see signs of this slowing down and we need to change it up, I think there are a billion different things you could consider doing. Like you could split that game apart into 5 different ways. You know, you could sell a campaign separately from the competitive multiplayer. You could sell zombies as an entirely separate game. You could take zombies and spin it off into its own thing completely that has its own completely different release cadence with a different team and different maps and different everything. And it's no longer tied to like, well, what guns are in Call of Duty this year? Like you could do a lot of things like that to, I think, better serve the audiences that like those specific modes. I would be curious to see what the split is when it comes to players that only play one of the modes of a game every year. Like how many players are there that just play zombies? How many players are there that never touch zombies but only play competitive multiplayer? Are there players, there's probably not enough players that just play campaign and never touch anything else to serve that audience specifically. But you could probably make a different type of money or make your money a different way if you said, here's the Call of Duty story mode and it's, and it's on Game Pass and you can, if you want it, like they kind of did that, like the Halo Infinite thing, sort of, free to play multiplayer, but the campaign's $30 or whatever it is. I'm not saying that that's definitely a way to go. I'm just saying that there's a wide variety of options at your disposal once you get to a point where you are open to making that change. Like Warzone doesn't necessarily need to be married to the annual game. It's nice that it is because your purchases do kind of carry over to a certain extent, but I wonder if the Warzone team feels that in a very if that adds an extra level of stress of just like, okay, now like we have to like insert 40 more guns into this game. Are we getting rid of the old guns? Are we like, how are we balancing this? What are we doing to keep this all straight? Also, we kind of have a motif and story that is happening inside of Warzone a little bit. And so having characters from the last 3 or 4 years of Call of Duty appearing here just gets weird at some point. Like if Call of Duty goes off and makes a Vietnam era game or a World War II era game again, and then suddenly they're like, oh, we need to put World War II weapons into Warzone this year. Are anyone going to pick those? Or are they going to pick the digital heartbeat sensors and all the other, like you end up with a lot of potentially incompatible things as you go down that road. And if anything, I think that's maybe like a little bit limiting, right? That they get to a point where they're like, okay, because all of this has to fit together and make sense, it probably gets a little bit harder for them to go and make a game that is like a completely different theater of war, a completely different time period. Like they're kind of stuck in this relatively modern era for the campaign and the multiplayer or whatever, because when they try to do World War II stuff in Warzone, it's just a weird thing, right? And the Switch needing its own port, like you assign that out. You go to an Iron Galaxy and you say, hey, we need to put Call of Duty on the Switch too. And they go, we're all right, dog, you got it. Or whoever you're going to go with. Like that's not, like Iron Galaxy is doing the Tony Hawk. I would not be shocked if Iron Galaxy, in fact, ended up being the studio that did Call of Duty for Switch 2. I bet they would do a good job with that. They've done good work with other Activision stuff. They're currently doing the Tony Hawk thing. Whatever. We'll see. But yeah, none of what's happening now makes me think that they would ever switch to a 2-year cycle. Again, I think there would have to be some kind of dramatic shift in sales or something for that to happen. Sam writes in and says, just want to give you some positive feedback to the recent updates on the Patreon. As primarily an audio listener, the new bonus podcasts and posting about your guest spots and other podcasts have been excellent. So I hope those continue. Great. Thanks, Sam. Yeah, that's, there's been a lot of bonus audio over the last month or two going up over there for folks. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, that's patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. The idea with kind of the interview stuff is eventually get to a point where when it makes sense to pre-announce, hey, I'm interviewing this person, that people on the advisory panel would be able to suggest a question or two and that sort of thing. So that's the long-term idea there as well. Patreon's doing some changes. They're trying to make some changes to their kind of homepage experience and find new ways to get people's Patreons in front of more people, which the Patreon site has not been good at that really ever. And so they're in the middle of testing out some stuff that I think is potentially interesting. We'll kind of see how all of that goes. Steven writes in and says, is Sam Lake in the same as Kojima? Which is not a full sentence, but hey. I got sucked into a Remedy rabbit hole recently as I played through the Alan Wake series, and I'm currently playing Control. I absolutely love it. I watched a lot of the team's interviews and read a lot about player sentiment around their games. It seems like you're either obsessed or confused by them. I can see how it could come across as the team being up their own ass. I absolutely love it. But I'm a little confused as to how to think about it. Would you put a team like Remedy in the same category of a Kojima in the sense that they are widely innovative, but sometimes veer into self-indulgence? There's clearly a similar appreciation for cinema and literature. No, I wouldn't. I don't think that. I would not call Remedy self-indulgent. I would not necessarily call, like you say that it could come across as them being up their own ass. I don't think that's. I don't agree with that. I don't think that Remedy's games are up their own ass. I don't think that I think that the stuff that they do is in service of the thing they are making, and it doesn't come off as just like, look at this random thing. It's their work feels very deliberate, and the way that they connect to their universe again feels very considered. So I would not necessarily look at them as in the same boat as Kojima, but I guess I'm approaching that from the other side of it, of just like, I would not saddle them with that. I would not strap that to them as like, you guys are like Kojima. Like, no, they're better than that. They're not as, you may not like the games as much from a gameplay perspective or whatever, but I think when you look at the type of writing that Remedy has done all the way back to Max Payne and the types of things that they've tried to do over the years, I do think that that they have been very deliberate in their actions. And some of the, but the similarity I would say to Hideo Kojima or Kojima Productions, is that there have been times where Remedy did not have control over its own work, the same way that Kojima Productions does not have access to the Metal Gear franchise anymore. Or I suppose this incarnation of the studio never did. And so you had this thing of like, well, Remedy doesn't, Max Payne belongs to Rockstar, and so Remedy doesn't really, have full control. And there was a while there that 505 was in partial control of the Control IP and what have you. I think, I don't know if Microsoft owns a piece of Quantum Break or what the deal is there, but Remedy was, they were working to kind of make sure that they had the full access to as much of their IP as possible, with Alan Wake and some of that other stuff that they have that level of control. And I think that that's a smart thing for them to do for the type of universe they want to build and or continue to build and everything else. And yeah, I don't know. Like they're similar in that they are, both studios that are known for having like some story-driven content that is sometimes, weird undersells it, I guess. Like they're making things that are deliberately strange, they're tapping into something very odd. And I think that some of Kojima's work has similar inspiration as perhaps some of the stuff that Remedy has tapped into, Remedy has, they're Twin Peaks fans. I mean, there's no shortage of Twin Peaks fans in the world today. I would put Swery in that camp before I would put Kojima in terms of outwardly deliberate work in a Twin Peaks like vein. But yeah, I don't, like Sam Lake, I think gets presented as the face of Remedy sometimes, not all the time, but he is frequently put out there. And he's the writer, he's Sam Lake comes across as part of a team. He does not come across as like, hey, this is my studio, the same way Hideo Kojima does. Remedy comes across like a team, whereas I think the Kojima stuff falls more into that kind of like more auteur, like presentationally auteur like positive and negative. I think that's you kind of take that. I wonder, like in my mind, and now that I'm like talking through this, I'm like doubting myself a little bit, but like in my mind, Sam Lake was always the guy they put out there because he's fucking Max Payne. And so you see Max Payne jumping around on the Game Awards stage doing his dance from Control, and you go, fuck, man, this is awesome. And so like for me, that's always been a big part of it, is that he's literally the face of Max Payne. But it's like I think he feels very down to earth in a way that I don't know that I would prescribe to the Kojima Productions side of things either. But yeah, I guess like that's he's. I feel like when Sam Lake steps out there and is part of giving a presentation or whatever it is, he feels like he is a person representing a team. When Hideo Kojima is out there presenting a game, he feels like he is presenting his game. Again, part of that's his name is on the studio. It is what it is, right? The Kojima's games have always been made by a team, and all of that stuff, right? I mean, that's definitely. It's not like he makes these games by himself. You could maybe argue that at various times during his career, he has had better people around him or worse people around him, depending on the era. I think you're going to have a personal take on when those times were. But I think like he's a person who's had a team with him the entire time as well. So, yeah. Carter writes in and says, you mentioned your disdain for 311 last week. Sure. Yeah, I probably did. Are there any jam bands that you do like, or do you hold this contempt for all of them? I.e., Grateful Dead, Fish, Government Mule, Allman Brothers Band, Bella Fleck, etc. Is 311 a jam band? 311 made some fucking pop records. 311 makes 3-minute songs about being down or the color of your energy or coming originally or what have you, right? They're not. Do they stretch these songs? Is there like a fucking 32-minute fucking cosmic version of Down that like I'm not aware of? Because Jesus Christ, that sounds like the fucking worst thing in the fucking planet. This 311's not a jam band, are they? They really like, we're gonna stretch this out, man. We're gonna really fucking stretch this out. No, God, I hope not. Are there any jam bands I do like? No, I guess not. I I like Ween up to a certain point, and then but I don't. I'm not interested in. I am not interested in Ween's live shows. I'm also not interested in anything Ween put out past like Chocolate and Cheese as well, but that's neither here nor there. I saw Ween live once, maybe twice, once or twice. And it was a good show. But I don't want I don't need I don't want a 27-minute version of Poop Ship Destroyer. I just don't need that in my life. So yeah, man, jam bands, no, I'm good. Oh, someone said that 311 is a jam band in the same way that Dave Matthews is a jam band. I'm like, yeah, I guess I could see that. I mean, 311 does have a cruise, right? Like that seems like maybe not jam band territory, but like they kind of suck in a real similar way. But Dave Matthews, I've seen them. I does that fucking Dave Matthews scatting is one of the most fucking cursed fucking things I have ever fucking seen. And it's the video of like them in like Central Park or something. And it's him like introducing the musicians that he's playing with and then going like, New York City Dave Matthews Band, and you're like, fuck you, you fucking dipshit. Look at you, you fucking moron. Fuck Dave Matthews. Holy shit, fuck Dave Matthews. But that's not, I mean, I don't know, like a band making a song longer or extending a song out a handful of minutes so that a guy can introduce the band or whatever, like that I wouldn't necessarily consider that like jam band territory, but like Dave Matthews probably more closely approaches the jam band thing than 311 does, as far as I can tell. But again, I am not an expert on 311's live show, so I couldn't tell you one way or the other. The 311 guys seem like they have fun. People, yeah, Nana was saying Dave Matthews has a bunch of like 20 plus minute songs. Fuck that. What the fuck? Stick fucking bamboo shoots under my fucking fingernails, dude. Like, who the fuck is going out there going like, yeah, I really want to see Dave Matthews. Like, fuck that dad ass looking motherfucker. Like, that's the guy. Like, of all the fucking jam band things you want to fucking go see, like, fine, you want to get into that shit. You're like, dude, I just love fucking taking mushrooms and listening to music. Like, fine, go listen to it. Go watch Fish. I don't think Fish has good fucking songs. I don't think Fish is fucking interesting. It's fucking whatever. But like, if you're like into it, fine, dude, fine. But Dave Matthews, that's where you're gonna plant your fucking flag? This button-up shirt, fake, phony-ass piece of shit? Fuck that, dude. Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, at least Fish fans, at least, like, you might have bad taste, but there's some taste there. If you're like, no, man, I just like the Dead. Like, okay, I don't, but okay. Sure, man. But if you're just like, yeah, man, I don't know. Like, I shop at the Gap also, and so I really think Dave Matthews speaks to me. Like, Dave Matthews is a fucking walking ad for the fucking Gap. He's the human equivalent of khakis. That's the fucking jam band you're gonna fucking get into? Jesus Christ. That's not like a bad, again, that's not the taste isn't lining up. That's just notes. You just don't have any. You're just like, I'll just listen to whatever, man. I don't know. Fucking lay it on me, dog. I don't care. Jesus fucking Christ. Oh my God. So no, I don't really like any jam bands. It's just not really my thing. But yeah, I went to a show in Berkeley that was Ween and the Flaming Lips, and it was like a fun show. But like No. Let's see here. Alvaro from Cincinnati writes in and asks, was Pac-Man a good game? No, what Drain says, Jeff hates jazz, confirmed. Look, I played in a jazz band when I was in the 8th grade. If you want to solo, the skill of soloing and improv, like all of that stuff, I don't really have a problem with it. If I was going to listen to jazz, it sure as fuck wouldn't be whatever the fuck the Dave Matthews Band is doing. The fucking like, I just fucking like pseudo fucking jazz adjacent. It's not even fusion. It's just like fucking dog shit. It's like, that's not jazz fusion. That's dog shit fusion. That's like a fucking pair of khakis merged with a pile of fucking steaming dog shit. And then a bunch of fucking, and then fucking ants marching fell out of it. Fucking Crash came out of it. Christ. Alvaro from Cincinnati asks, was Pac-Man a good game? Some fusion, like, hey man, like I don't love it. Like, you know, like there's some jazz fusion that I've listened to over the, you know, more recently that I'm like, yeah, this is maybe all right. Like, there's some Japanese stuff that, you know, you kind of listen to, like, yeah, this is, you know, I could listen to this. This, you see where this comes from. You see, you know, yeah, all right. There's a lineage here that I kind of appreciate. Extremely old jazz, sure. Why not? Yes, the themed taxi. Now we're talking jazz. Do I hate Frank Zappa? God damn it. All right. We want to get into complicated questions. I don't hate Frank Zappa. I'm like one step below that. I really like Valley Girl. And that's it. I think that's somehow like lower than hating Frank Zappa. He was like, no, Valley Girl's a catchy song. Flux Pavilion did a dubstep remix of Valley Girl relatively recently. There's a music video for it even. And it's a great version of the song. It's a great version of the song. No, I don't know. And Zappa fucking, no. Not really. I don't really, no. Jazz Fart's a good song. I think of all the Zappa stuff. That's a real hit. But yeah, man, I don't, it's, what's the one song, the song that did Adult do a cover? Anyway, whatever. The cover of a Zappa song that I thought was pretty good, but I can't. I'm too fucking angry to discuss it anymore. Yes, that Flux Pavilion remix was like on an official remix album. Like it's an official like Frank Zappa thing. It's not just like Flux Pavilion went off and did a remix of it and went, oh, check this shit out. No, it's like an official actual thing. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Alvaro from Cincinnati writes in and says, was Pac-Man a good game? Hearing you talk about your family's adventure with Pac-Man had me thinking about the original Pac-Man and how it would have fared to a review back then. Maybe not in the old way that GameSpot would review games, but just as an overall review. Yes, Pac-Man is a very important and influential game, but is the game as a whole good? Did anyone even do reviews of games like that back then? I have the same question about Space Invaders, since that was one of my first games in the Game Boy, so the only version I played. Was the original considered a good game by the standards of the day? So there weren't really reviews the way that we think about video game reviews today. No, that stuff didn't necessarily exist. You were starting to see some magazines and some other things like that form, But a lot of the early magazines about arcades were focused on money because it was magazines for people who owned arcades. And so it's a lot of ads saying like, you need a conversion kit to convert this. We're over here at Universal. We've got all the hottest conversion kits. We've got Mr. Do. We got Mr. Do's Castle. Get them now. And so, you didn't necessarily have qualitative reviews. It was more just like, these are the games that are making a fuck ton of money right now. And by the time we got to more editorial style coverage, they weren't really necessarily writing reviews of like the arcade version of Pac-Man. I'm sure by the time we get to like the 2600 version of Pac-Man, these are your questions the Video Game History Foundation's library, I'm sure, could answer right now. But I'm sure we get to like reviews of like the 2600 version of Pac-Man or the 8-bit 400, 800 version of Pac-Man that Atari released. Like you get to those, but like a review of actual arcade Pac-Man, there might not be a ton of those. Maybe you find some in like an old newspaper or something where they just wrote one on, on a lark. But either way, like Pac-Man, was a force, and it was a genuine force. Like I saw lines out the door at my local arcade of people waiting to play Pac-Man or Ms. Pac-Man. It was huge. And it was at least as good as, if not better than, the great games of that era. It's one of the top 5, top 10, like of that like early 80s, late 70s to early 80s era of arcade gaming, pre-Gauntlet, let's say. I don't know where you draw the cutoff. Like probably like 83 is probably where you cut that off. 77 to 83 or something. You don't really get a lot of games that are better than Pac-Man until you get to Ms. Pac-Man, right? Space Invaders, by the time Space Invaders had blown up in Japan, I mean, if you want to know, was Space Invaders considered a good game, go read about the 100 yen coin shortage that happened in Japan after the release of Space Invaders, because it was so popular, because people were so into it that, it was hard to find coins sometimes. So Space Invaders was massive, more massive in Japan though than it was here. And I think part of that is, I don't know when Space Invaders came to the US, but like arcades probably didn't really get popular until 80, 81, somewhere in that zone. And so you end up in a situation where like Space Invaders was the right timing for Japanese arcades, but by the time it would have made it over to the US, and by the time there would have been enough locations in the US to have a bunch of Space Invaders machines around, Galaxian was close to, if not already existing. And then, as Galaxian would, fade away in favor of Galaga, Space Invaders didn't necessarily have an enormous time in the sun here in the States, as I remember it. Because by the time I saw Space Invaders on a pretty regular basis, it was in an arcade that already had Galaxian and was about to get Galaga. And so in a world where Galaxian exists and the ships can dive at you and its color and it looks, like Space Invaders was more of a curiosity. The arcades still had Space Invaders machines, and they would have Space Invaders Deluxe machines because they would iterate on Space Invaders as well. But Space Invaders would end up coming into its own as a really good early Atari 2600 game. And so the home release of Space Invaders probably ended up being the dominant form of it in the United States, as a good early driver for the 2600. That's how I remember it. And yeah, maybe I'm misremembering something about the coin shortage around Space Invaders, but that's how I remember reading about it. But like a lot of stuff about the early days, especially early days in Japan, some of that is anecdotal and do your own research. But is Pac-Man good? Sure, yeah. But like, also remember that there were very few like relatively speaking, there were no video games then. There were barely any. Compared to today, we release a whole arcade's worth of video games every single day now onto Steam. You know? There's probably more games come out in a week than came out in the entire year of 1980. The average week now is probably like bigger than that whole year was. That'd be I should count that up. That'd be an interesting little statistic. But in that context, things moved so slowly. And of course, like, just games coming out didn't mean you had access to them. Arcade operators had to believe in the game and say, oh, I think this game will make me some money, so I'll get it. So different arcades had different games, and so you'd have to travel around a bit if you wanted to see everything there was to see. Not every arcade had a mousetrap machine. I was lucky enough to have played every single game that was featured on the Buckner and Garcia album Pac-Man Fever. I had played all of those games before. My local arcade didn't have every single one of those games, but I was lucky enough to be able to travel around to about 2 or 3 different arcades that were within driving range of where I was at. My dad would, I could convince him to take me to the faraway arcade from time to time. And the faraway arcade was the one that had a mousetrap machine. That was probably the hardest one to find. Yeah, it's okay. Signal and Noise says in the chat that there were 581 games released in the last week. Yeah, that's more games. Like, if we think about that entire era, like 77 to 83, like that's probably more games than were in arcades that entire time. Pole Position 2, Turbo, Firefighter, like all, we go all the way just like across the board. That's probably more games than were released in that entire era. So Pac-Man was every game that came to arcades and had any amount of distribution at all was extremely influential because there were so few games coming out all the time. And so this was a time before, when the genre makeup was very different, right? It was like, well, we got these shoot 'em ups and we got these maze games. And, Frogger, I guess, is kind of a maze game. Maybe we'd count it more like that than we would a shoot 'em up. So I guess Frogger's more like a Pac-Man. Frogger's more like Ladybug than it is like Galaga 88. I don't know. So yeah, man, obviously it was just a very different time. And so Pac-Man being as big as it was incredibly influential. I mean, you go look at all the other kind of maze games that came out. Like, those games came out because of Pac-Man. Ladybug came out because of Pac-Man. Ladybug, from the designer of Mr. Do. Ladybug's a pretty good game. It's no Mr. Do, but what are you gonna do? The Mr. Do machine, I had I did not. I had much greater access to Mr. Do's castle at local arcades. Mr. Do itself, I probably had seen it on an episode of Starcade or something like that, but didn't find a Mr. Do machine until the grocery store that my grandmother went to had a Mr. Do machine, and I was able to play it a little bit there when she would go get groceries. One time I got a diamond, which gives you a free credit, and she would not let me play a second game of Mr. Do because she didn't want to stay while I did it. And yeah. It's the memories that stick with you, about being prevented from playing a great game like Mr. Do. But yes, Space Invaders was considered a great game by the standards of the day. I think the impact of it was lessened in the US due to just timing and the popularity of arcades and all of that. Pac-Man was every bit as big as you think it is, and then some. It's hard to... I gave an interview. I don't know if the interview ever went anywhere, but like I was on the phone with a guy for like half an hour in like, I don't know, 2019, or I forget when it was. I was still working in an office. But it's about Fortnite and the impact of Fortnite and the size of Fortnite. And I found myself saying, just kind of in the middle of this conversation, like, you know, Fortnite is like the Pac-Man of its day. Like it's, you know, like it's big and it's widespread, and its influence extends outside of video games culturally in ways that, you know, we still have not felt. I would still stand by that there's, you know, probably more to come from Fortnite that we will have to deal with. But Pac-Man fever was a real thing. Like every store you went to, there was, they merchandised the shit out of Pac-Man. The cartoon came on. Like there was a ton. I had a Pac-Man lunchbox. I still have a lot of weird Pac-Man memorabilia from the time. They're just, you know, that I just got. And I would, as much as I liked Pac-Man, it was never like my favorite thing. I just liked video games, and there was no other merchandise or anything for any other game because nothing else had ascended to the level of Pac-Man. Donkey Kong eventually kind of got there. Like there were books, there were like coloring books and activity books. I had a Donkey Kong activity book that had like a maze and some little puzzles and stuff, you know, that they made. But I think that by the time that came out, I think that was they had already started calling him. No, he was still in that book. He was still Jumpman. I believe that was a pre-Mario Donkey Kong book. And then by the time they get to the Saturday Supercade stuff, by then they had started calling him Mario in that cartoon. But at that time, you know, like Mario wasn't, you know, it wasn't like the Mario you have now. Like, it, you know, Donkey Kong was the star of Donkey Kong. Mario would eventually become a bigger deal. By the time Mario Brothers came out, the first, you know, arcade game with Luigi in it anyway, but not the first, it's like a Game & Watch game, right? But by the time Mario Brothers came out and they started making a Mario game that did not have any Donkey Kong in it at all, you know, it became clear that Mario was, you know, a video game star. But like even then, he was on the level of like Pitfall Harry. You know, the number of like nameable, meaningful characters in video games was relatively low. And so it was like, here's Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man and Mario and Q*bert and Dirk the Daring from Dragon's Lair, who also got his own cartoon because the game was already a fucking cartoon. Dig Dug, but you didn't know that his name was Taizo Hori back then. But like there was no, you know, Dig Dug didn't appear in other stuff that I can remember. But like Pitfall Harry, you know, like Activision's Pitfall was definitely on that level. I mean, you know, Pitfall Harry was in that cartoon as well. Like he rose to that, but so was like the kangaroo from Kangaroo, who didn't, unless they named her in the cartoon, I don't think they ever had a name. But yeah, then they made that pole position cartoon, which is super weird because it's like kids driving cars and fighting crime or something, which is like pole position is just a driving. I don't know, it's fucking weird. But yeah, like the list of like marketable like video game characters in that era was relatively low. And so like you know, a game like Q*bert, where they took the time to design and name every single character, like, you know, you have Coily, you have Ugg and Wrong Way, you have Slick, you have Green Ball, you know, the the amazing cast of characters of Q*bert stood out more than most, protagonists and characters found in other video games. Just because they bothered to name, and Q*bert is a game that feels like so lost to time. Because they didn't sequelize the shit out of it. I mean, what was the last Q*bert game? It was like the PS3. Like Sony released a Q*bert game because they have the rights to it now or whatever. There was like a shitty PSN Q*bert game that just kind of looked like shit. I don't know. But I don't think there's been much done since. I mean, there hasn't been much done since original ass Q*bert. There's 2 more Q*bert games that came to arcades. Faster, harder, more challenging Q*bert which is just like a fucking hard ROM for original Q*bert, and then Q*bert's Cubes, which is not very good. There's a Q*bert pinball machine. But yeah, Gottlieb as a company didn't stick around, and so Q*bert just kind of faded into obscurity. Bentley Bear, yeah, man. Bentley Bear. Fuck yeah. I love Bentley Bear. Crystal Castles. Amazing video game. Crazy video game. I was trying to describe Crystal Castles to my daughter the other day. And it's like, okay, so he's a bear, and if the bear's wearing the wizard's hat, he can't be hurt. But then there's these gem eaters, and they eat the gems, and you got to get the gems before they do. And if you stand back here and jump, it warps you ahead like 5 levels. But it's hard to describe. It's hard to describe Bentley Bear or Crystal Castles to people. For sure. That's going to do it for emails. Thanks everybody for writing in. Podcast@guard.bike is the email address to write in with your video game questions and jazz thoughts. Don't write in with your jazz thoughts. I don't care. I'm happy to talk music, but also I have nothing else to say about jazz as a general concept. So if you have like a really long, like, well, Mr. Pastorius has one, please send it in. Yes, no, instead send in questions about the Zookeeper bonus stage and how cool it was. I probably still have notebooks somewhere that is me drawing the Zookeeper bonus stage over and over again. Because Zookeeper is fucking great. Now Zookeeper, that's a video game. That's gonna do it for us here. I'll be back tomorrow with something, and we'll hang out and do something with video games. And I'll be back next week with more podcasts. So come on back for that, and have a good one. I'll see you.